Pokemon, medicine and martial arts. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 676 Refutation. Eamon first adjusted his sonic camera, then held the remote in one hand and a Pokeball in the other. He couldn't conceal the excitement in his eyes as he watched Moltres, now completely immobilized, sinking into the ground. As for why? Eamon clearly didn't use Pokemon, yet he still had a Pokeball. It was obvious, because he was a Pokemon hunter. He primarily hunted Pokemon, and besides using more primitive and high-tech methods, forcibly capturing them with a Pokeball was the most convenient. With the aid of high technology, Eamon naturally no longer needed Pokemon. While Pokemon played an irreplaceable role in everyday life, some radicals believe that technology also played an irreplaceable role in life, even surpassing Pokemon in status. This led to Eamon, a renowned Pokemon bounty hunter, preferring his high-tech equipment to the so-called friendship and bond between Pokemon and their trainers. He saw Pokemon as little more than disguised hunting tools. Haha Moltres. I never thought I'd ever be able to capture a legendary beast. Just thinking about it makes me excited. If I hadn't already agreed to the customer's request and accepted the advance payment, I'd actually be tempted to take you home and treasure you as a specimen. As if struck by something exciting, Eamon's smile grew even more excited, and his vigilance toward the surroundings dropped a bit. Okay, baby, stop struggling. Just let me collect you into the Pokeball and I'll find you a good idea. That way, you won't be all alone and lonely. As if thoroughly enjoying his prey's desperate struggle, Eamon approached Moltres, but didn't rush to capture it. Instead, he crouched down with a playful smile, staring into Moltres' now somewhat bewildered state. He could clearly see the resentment, anger, and despair in Moltres' eyes. If it weren't for Moltres' flames, Eamon would have been petting it like he was saving Suicune. Moltres' flames were like those of Pyro, and only a trainer who fully approved of it would feel no burning sensation when touching it. The flames burning within were merely imaginary. But if someone who disapproved of Moltres still tried to touch it, they would absolutely and utterly be burned. And don't be fooled by Moltres' distressed and frail appearance. The reality was, not just the temperature, but the flickering flames alone would surely burn anyone who dared to touch them. Flame Moltres cried feebly, its eyes straining to glance at Eamon. It tried to lift its wings for a flap, but now it felt incredibly strained. Alright, I told you to stop struggling. You're being very disobedient. If you're disobedient, I can't help but want to. Eamon's smile grew wider, but it felt increasingly eerie as it continued, giving off a chilling feeling. The more you disobey, the more you struggle, the more I want to teach you a lesson. Eamon's slightly piercing voice rang out, accompanied by the use of the sonic camera once again. Moltres was already extremely weak. If it were to be hit by the sonic wave attack again, it would lose its combat capability, of course. But if it were to be severely damaged again in this state, Moltres would be completely overwhelmed. Unless there was a Pokemon doctor Pokemon Center nearby to provide immediate treatment, Moltres' condition would be truly critical. You, who had been witnessing all this, naturally knew this. But at this moment, he felt powerless, as it seemed too late. If I set out to rescue now, it would be too late. Instead of wasting my time, I might as well think about what method I should use to rescue Moltres. On this side, as expected, as Eamon pressed the shutter of the camera, an invisible sound wave visible to the naked eye has spread towards Moltres. In just a moment, the already weak Moltres became even weaker. Its eyelids closed involuntarily as if it had been in a fight. The flames originally emitted from its body began to slowly extinguish at a speed visible to passers-by, leaving only a few sparks flickering and jumping on it, indicating that the flames were still alive at this moment. Look, I told you not to move. Just surrender obediently, okay? Well, now, although I spent some extra effort, I finally got it. Damn it, Eamon, stop it right there. You are not allowed to touch a hair of Moltres. Pokemon like Moltres belong to nature and should not belong to any one person. You are not allowed to treat it like this. Oh. Belongs to nature. How don't make me laugh to death. If it belongs to nature, then what about your Suicune? Aren't you going to become the person you are talking about? Amen laughed wildly with disdain, with undisguised sarcasm in his eyes. Humph. I am different from people like you. Suicune and I have the same pursuits and dreams. Yu was choked by what he said, but then he quickly adjusted himself and spoke righteously. How, look at how high-sounding you are. This is just an excuse for you so-called righteous people to cover up. Since you can conquer Suicune, why can't I convince Moltres? I can arrange everything after that. Yu was furious after hearing this. But he felt helpless. What he said before was all true. Unlike Moltres, who was conquered, Suicune can be said to have grown up with him. The most important thing is that compared to the later conquest, the bond between Yu and Suicune is more like friends because of their growing up together. Chapter 677, The Return of the Phantom Thief Fission. Compared to the subsequent captures, Yu and Suicune, with their childhood bond, had a relationship more like friendship. But saying this to Amen right now felt pointless. After all, no amount of persuasion would avail against someone so thoroughly evil. But seeing Yu's subsequent silence, Amen assumed he'd rendered him speechless. Consequently, he couldn't help but feel a sense of smugness. After all, he'd spent the entire day trembling with fear, intimidated by Yu's impressive power. Now, it was finally his turn to show off his might. How could he not be delighted? It seemed he was overly excited. Amen didn't immediately throw the Pokeball. Instead, he gripped the trembling Moltres, leaning towards him. I never expected it. I never expected it. The renowned bounty hunter, Amen, has such a hilarious side. At that moment, a voice suddenly boomed through everyone's ears. And then, before Amen could react, the Pokeball he'd been clutching vanished right before his eyes. Oh my god. Where's my Pokeball? It hurts. It's so hot. Ouch. I'm losing it. Amen felt his hand lighten, and he glanced over, instinctively letting out a cry of surprise. But even then, his movements didn't stop. He instinctively reached out for Moltres, and the burning sensation from Moltres snapped it back to consciousness, causing it to cry out in surprise. Who is it? So fast? I didn't even have time to react, and the Pokeball in Amen's hand had already been taken away. Yu was also shocked at this moment. He had never expected such a sudden turn of events. It reminded him of the idiom the mantis stalks the cicada, while the oriole is behind, but even with this sudden change, Yu felt no joy at all. After all, he already knew that the mantis stalks the cicada, while the oriole is behind. The other party's purpose must have been to get Moltres. Rather than having Moltres snatched away by an unknown person, Yu now somewhat hoped that Amen would snatch Moltres away. After all, while Amen was a notorious Pokémon bounty hunter, they had at least spent a day and a half together. While not a perfect acquaintance, they were somewhat familiar with each other. Furthermore, Yu believed that Amen was a bit more foolish than an unknown enemy. Even if Moltres was truly snatched away by him, he could still find a way to retrieve it. It's you. Yu was startled awake by Amen's voice. Following his gaze, he saw nothing but a blanket of white. Phantom Thief Fission. This time, without waiting, Amen spoke. Yu immediately revealed a visitor's identity. The man who arrived wore a medieval top hat and a monocle over his right eye. He wore a white suit, a blue shirt, an orange tie, white shoes, white gloves, and a white cape. In short, his outfit was mostly white, like a magician's. Who is this Kato Fission, the one who had stolen Xiaoju's jewel necklace in Mire City and whom Yu had just happened to chase? It was because of Fission that Yu and Xiaoju had met. Hey, Kato Fission. Can you give me back my Pokeball now? Don't you enjoy stealing gems? Why are you trying to steal my Pokeball today, even though it's so late? Or is it that Kato Fission is so broke these days that he can't even afford a single Pokeball? After the initial shock, Amen quickly came to his senses. He looked at Fission with disdain, his tone full of sarcasm. After all, while their identities and origin seemed somewhat jarring, one was a Pokemon enthusiast. The other a Pokemon bounty hunter. They'd likely at least heard of each other. That's why Amen immediately recognized Kato Fission. Pokeball. You said I'm a thief. Buying your own isn't as good as stealing it, right? Like a juggler, Kato Fission made no attempt to return the Pokeball to Amen. Instead, he twirled it endlessly between his fingers. Kato Fission, who is this? Xiaoxu asked, somewhat puzzled. Kato Fishin is a magic thief who uses Pokemon to commit crimes and enjoys stealing other people's gems, Yu explained casually. However, Yu's description left Kato Fishin visibly dissatisfied. Hey, how dare you frame me in front of such a lovely young lady? Okay, I'm a magic thief, but won't the jewels I stole be returned? I'm just putting on a magic show for you. Magic show? Did I believe your nonsense? Yu snorted disdainfully. You? Kato Fishin pointed at Yu, speechless with anger. What? Am I wrong? A thief who specializes in stealing other people's treasures. Yes. I'm a thief, but I'm much better than some Pokemon dealer. And I don't have time to argue with you. I have things to do right now. Kato Fishin was clearly reluctant to pay attention to Yu, and his attention was once again on Amen. Amen looked a little annoyed. After all, from the conversation between Kato Fishin and Yu just now, it seemed that they had completely forgotten him. However, Yu was still a little surprised that Kato Fishin actually remembered him. As for why Yu remembered Kato Fishin, it was simply because they had fought before, and he knew that despite his identity as Kato Fishin, he must also be an extremely powerful trainer. Otherwise, his Pokemon wouldn't have fought his Pokemon in a draw before. Moreover, at that time, Kato Fishin was in the process of evacuating and was in a hurry to leave. But even so, he actually let Kato Fishin sneak away. However, he didn't know that Kato Fishin had the same idea about Yu. This is why Kato Fishin didn't show any surprise or ignore Yu when he spoke earlier. Chapter 678 Magic Tricks. Why don't you guys just keep chatting and ignore me? Seeing Kato Fishin and Yu's gazes once again, Amen's smile widened. You're overthinking it. Any prey I, Kato Fishin, set my sights on never fails to be snatched away, and you're no exception. And this time, I've got my eye on Moltres, so I advise you to just leave. Kato Fishin's words were incredibly arrogant, yet paired with his incredibly confident demeanor, they felt perfectly natural. Ha, I didn't hear you wrong, did you? A venerable Pokemon thief is actually stealing Pokemon now? You're the renowned Kato Fishin in the world of thieves. I never thought you'd fall so low as to steal other people's Pokemon? Amen laughed disdainfully, his smile seeming incredibly exaggerated. And when he wiped his eyes with his hand, it really looked hilarious. No. You're wrong. You just said it. I'm sure you already know it's a Pokemon thief. What's the difference between stealing Pokemon and other people's belongings? Besides, I'm the renowned magician and thief of Kato Fishin. I want to perform under the spotlight. How can I call it stealing? Tisk. Amen, clearly at a loss for words, choked on his words and could only snort coldly to express his dissatisfaction. Well, you actually want to steal my prey? Then come on, see if you can snatch it from me. And I want to see who's more powerful, you Pokemon thieves, or us Pokemon bounty hunters. Amen was clearly getting angry and cracked his knuckles. He glared at Kato Fishin with a snarl, as if he was about to charge and pummel him to the ground. Really? Then you'll have to wait and see. Kato Fishin placed his hand over his chest and gave a gentlemanly bow, looking at Amen with a bright smile. But first, I have one thing to do. His bright smile faded into a mysterious one, and Kato Fishin placed his index finger in front of his mouth. What is it? Stop playing tricks on me. If you think I'm being unreasonable, I'll grab you and beat you up. Don't worry, young man. You mustn't be so cautious. The moment of witnessing a miracle is about to come, so don't blink. Kato Fishin raised his hand slightly, and just as everyone's eyes turned to Kato Fishin's raised arm, they saw that the sonic weapon remote control that Amen had been holding had disappeared without a trace. That's right, it disappeared without a trace. Without even a hint or a sign. However, if anyone was the most confused at this moment, it would definitely be Amen. Because he had witnessed this firsthand, he didn't feel the remote disappear from his hands. He simply felt his clenched hands suddenly empty, and when he looked over, there was nothing there. What kind of scheme did you pull? Faced with this unknown method, Amen felt inexplicably panicked. What kind of scheme? You know, I'm a magician, the best in the magic world. Of course, I just used a little trick. Kato Fishin still wore a gentleman's smile, but through his slightly reflective monocle, the smile could be clearly seen. I don't believe it. So-called magic is just some deceptive trick. If you have the guts, make this camera disappear, or I won't accept your defeat. Amen was gritting his teeth at this moment. He didn't expect that he had been humiliated again and again in the past few days. Ha, since you've requested it, Mr. Amen, I can only obey. Isn't it just making your camera disappear? How difficult is that? With the sound of Kato Fishin snapping his fingers, another incredible scene unfolded. The camera, still strapped to Amen's neck, vanished into thin air once again. Holy crap! This magic trick can actually pull objects out of thin air. Could it be some legendary sorcery? Yu was completely stunned, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. It was as if he was trying to figure out the reason behind Kato Fishin's dematerialization. However, no matter how hard Yu stared, he still couldn't figure out the secret. Ha, I told you we were about to witness a miracle. Now, let me introduce my assistant. With a dashing flick of his white cape, Kato Hidden casually flung a Pokemon into existence beside him. Upon seeing the Pokemon's true appearance, Xiaoxi's mouth dropped open in surprise, and she looked at the Dragonite, now in her arms, in disbelief. So, if the Pokemon standing beside Kato Hidden wasn't Dragonite, then what other Pokemon could it be? While this was understandable, Dragonite wasn't a rare Pokemon, and it wasn't something Xiaoxi possessed alone. But most importantly, as Dragonite's trainer, Xiaoxi knew his own Dragonite intimately. Therefore, he could be absolutely certain that the one appearing beside Kato Hidden was none other than Dragonite. If she hadn't been holding her own Transfiguration Dragon in her arms at that moment, Xiaoxi would have suspected that her Transfiguration Dragon had abandoned her for another trainee. HMPH. So that's how it is? Then everything makes sense. Yu, on the other hand, looked lost in thought, then suddenly seemed to have a sudden realization. Yu, what's going on? What on earth is going on? I'm feeling a little dizzy. Could that magic really be that magical? After hearing Yu's chuckle at knowing the answer, Serena couldn't help but ask curiously. Chapter 679 Magic Ditto. Selina, you still haven't figured it out? This isn't some so-called magic trick at all. It's simply a phenomenon created by this phantom thief, using Pokemon. Yu offered a brief explanation before turning to Fei Tian, seemingly asking, but with a tone of certainty. Well, am I right? And I'm saying, it's been so long, isn't it time for your Dragonite to reveal its true form? While the others were puzzled and bewildered, Fei Tian wasn't the least bit surprised by Yu's confident question. You're incredible. You truly are my prized opponent. Back then, only you could have cornered me. I never imagined you could see through my magic. I'm truly honored to be recognized as a rival by the renowned Kato Fishin. Yu also smiled. Although Fishin was a thief, he still fully recognized the strength he had demonstrated. Clearly, Fishin still remembered him. But come to think of it, someone like Fishin was a renowned figure in the world of phantom thieves. Nothing he set his sights on was beyond his grasp. Yet, just last time, after stealing Xiaojuer's jewel necklace, Yu had followed him closely, even engaging in a dramatic aerial duel. That aerial battle alone was a vivid memory for both amateurs and Fishin alike. Moreover, compared to Pokemon bounty hunters like Amen who steal other people's Pokemon or recklessly capture and sell them, the behavior of Kato Fishin, who simply steals other people's money, is relatively good. Furthermore, according to legend, every time Fishin steals something, it returns to its original owner the next day. This has led to rumors that Fishin doesn't actually steal other people's property, but rather enjoys the process of stealing and competing with them. Whether this is true or not is impossible to verify, and only Fishin himself knows. Yu, at least, thinks this is a good thing. So, Yu, what's going on? I'm still a little confused. Serena was clearly determined to get to the bottom of it. However, faced with Serena's repeated questioning, Yu didn't seem to be impatient at all. Instead, he explained very patiently. In fact, everyone who has heard of Kato Fishin knows that he has a Ditto that works very well with him. They are almost inseparable. Whenever bad Ditto Fishin appears, Ditto can almost be seen. But now, Fishin has been out for such a long time and there is still no sign of Ditto. In addition, Xiaoxi is so surprised and that Dragonite is very similar to Xiaoxi's. Combining all these factors, we can only say that Dragonite must have been transformed by Ditto, especially through this point. It makes me know clearly. Mr. Kato Fishin should have been here for a long time. At least he should have arrived when we had the dispute with Amen. What, is this true or false? But why didn't we notice that there were other people nearby before? Yes, we observed carefully before coming, especially during the conflict just now. Obviously, everyone was very surprised by Yu Yu's answer. Then, they all asked their questions. Well, I have to say, Mr. Kato-Fishin, your camouflage skills are truly exceptional. You could even say your concealment techniques have reached perfection. If it weren't for my previous deductions, even I wouldn't have noticed your arrival. As Yu Yu said this, a wave of fear welled up in his heart. Fortunately, Kato-Fishin was clearly targeting Amen this time, not them. If they had been targeted like Amen just now, their situation would have been truly dire. Yes, I've been here for a while. However, I only showed up during your confrontation. I thought you'd leave later, but you left right after the meeting and breakfast. I haven't even had breakfast yet, I'm starving. Kato-Fishin seemed a little frustrated as he spoke. He rubbed his stomach with a hint of dissatisfaction, seemingly complaining to Yu Yu, but in reality, his criticism was directed at Amen. As expected, a flash of white light appeared on the shifter standing next to the evil Fishin. It instantly transformed into a soft, pink Ditto. Remarkably, Ditto now held only two objects in its hands. They were, of course, a camera and a remote control. It turned out that even during the initial clash between Yu Yu and Amen, Kato-Fishin had already begun planning. He first had his Ditto transform on Xiaoxi's shifter, then exploited the shifter's own unique properties to blend in, temporarily becoming invisible. He then used this state to quietly slip past Amen. As for how Ditto then completely destroyed the camera and remote control, that's a secret I can't share. Kid, stop looking down on me. You're really going too far. He watched Ditto, now wielding his two belongings like a battle rating, parading his might before him. Amen hated his training rack, and with it, his eyes were filled with ferocity, as if he wanted to charge at Kato-Fishin and fight him to the death. Oh, really? I'm not saying that without these technological devices, you're really nothing. And if I remember correctly, you're not even a Pokemon trainer. There wouldn't be any Pokemon willing to fight for you. Kato-Fishin kept a warm smile on his face, as if nothing could surprise him. Yes, so what? Indeed, as you said, I don't have any Pokemon to help me. But, Chapter 680 The battle resumes. Yes, so what? Indeed, as you said, I don't have any Pokemon to help me. But do you really think I'm going to give up just like that? I have to admit that Kato-Fishin is a bit too fanciful. As if finally finding Fishin's flaw, Amen finally smiled. He even started to mock Fishin, as if only this could vent his excitement. Isn't it? You only used technology. I really don't understand why you're such a freak in the Pokemon bounty hunting world. No matter how skilled a Pokemon bounty hunter is, most of them use Pokemon to help them catch Pokemon, but you're different. Are you the only one who's special, wanting to be independent? It really has to be said that despite Fishin's outwardly friendly and easygoing demeanor, he's actually quite a powerful talker. Ha, it's just as you said. Compared to those so-called Pokemon, I believe more in high technology. Amen, seemingly having his thoughts revealed, no longer attempted to hide his feelings. He then burst into laughter, his unsightly manner fully revealed. However, while Amen's current demeanor was deeply unpleasant and repulsive, it didn't affect his movements in the slightest. Wisps of electricity flickered along his metallic arm. Oh, it looks like you really have a trick up your sleeve. As he spoke, Kato-Fishin unsheathed his poker gun and fired several poker cards in Amen's direction. The cards, which had once seemed incredibly soft and easily ripped, became as hard as steel after being fired from the gun. There was no garbled metallic texture, only the simple sound of tearing through the air. Where are your tricks? Are these poker cards trying to play tricks on me? Amen sneered disdainfully, waving his metal-clad arm. Those cards, once capable of inflicting immense damage, now seemed like fully realized cards. As they struck Amen's arm, only a faint metallic sound echoed. Then, as if their power had been drained from them, the cards, once bearing incredibly sharp wings, fluttered limply to Amen's feet. I told you, these cards of yours are truly useless. After blocking the attacks one by one, Amen leaned forward slightly and waved his hand, sending all the cards into his grasp. Furthermore, he arranged the cards into a fan shape, fanning himself. Damn it. If that's the case, then you'll often witness my friend's wrath. Ditto, show us your charm. Transformer. As soon as the words left his mouth, Ditto used his transformation ability once again. This time, it transformed into a cuddly-looking Pikachu. What's wrong with this kid? Why didn't the tall, majestic Pokemon stay the same? instead transforming into a cute, powerless Pikachu. Kato Fishin, despite his composure, couldn't help but put his hand to his forehead. He was truly unimpressed with his Ditto's personality. His master was so incredibly handsome, so logically, his sexual orientation should have mirrored his master's, becoming a truly manly person. Yet, it wasn't living up to expectations. However, at this point, Kato Fishin couldn't say anything more and could only give the Pikachu transformed Ditto an order. Go Ditto. Show that person who looked down on you what you're made of. Ditto, without hesitation, his ultimate electric attack, 100,000 volts, was unleashed. Faced with this 100,000 volt attack, Amon didn't hesitate at all and immediately raised his mechanically covered arm. Constructed in the center of his palm, within the mechanical wrapping, was a circular emitter. At that moment, the circular emitter began to glow, its light growing ever brighter. Finally, it transformed into a beam of energy that charged towards the 100,000 volt attack. In a brief moment, the two massive energies collided, and once again, a continuous explosion echoed. This time, as if the power was too overwhelming, smoke and dust billowed. Overall, this battle between the Pokémon and the high-tech device was a close match. But did they think this result would convince both sides to give up? Those people were completely unconvinced. It was as if they were deeply dissatisfied with the fact that their 100,000 volt attack had been easily blocked. Therefore, without giving any orders from Kato flying below, Ditto 1 unleashed a 100,000 volt attack, sporadically lashing out. Amon, unwilling to be outdone, concentrated his energy, blasting out sporadically, seemingly unconcerned with the energy consumption. This battle, however, left everyone present, aside from the individuals involved, Ino and Applause. Of course, some were also uneasy. And one such individual, of course, was Yu. In his previous martial arts adventures, Yu had seen all sorts of things, hadn't he? But even now, after witnessing the scene, he couldn't help but sigh in awe. The energy beams Amon had unleashed looked to have a power of at least 100,000 volts. Initially, Yu had considered waiting for the battle to begin, disregarding morality and ethics. He was about to unleash his Yageo spear once again and engage the opponent. Of course, after witnessing the scene, the two energies continuously bombarded and collided, and Yu completely abandoned that idea. What the hell was this? What was going on? He had thought that as soon as the opponent started fighting, he could instantly join the fray and quell the situation with lightning speed. But fantasy is always beautiful, reality is always cruel. Under such circumstances, Yu couldn't even think of charging forward. He was already hesitating in his heart. He was also secretly comparing his own internal strength, wondering if it could withstand these energy beams. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 681 Favor. He was also secretly comparing his own internal energy, wondering if it could withstand these energy beams. However, after a thorough comparison, Yu finally came to a conclusion. The opponent was truly disgusting and unscrupulous, actually using high-tech weaponry. If one of these energy beams were to strike him, he would surely be in for a thrill. Therefore, Yu completely dispelled the idea of drawing his Yageo gun and joining the fray. The battle continued, but the situation became clearer as time went on. Ditto, which had previously been able to battle Amon on equal terms, now had no advantage. Instead, Amon, using the mechanical arms wrapped around his hands, fired energy beams that were each uniquely different. This diverse energy beam caught Ditto completely off guard. I've already told you, how can Pokemon compare to high-tech gadgets? You still don't believe me? Now I'll show you. Amon's voice rang out with a hint of pride, and he launched his final attack. With just a few steps forward, he reached Ditto, who had no time to dodge, and lifted it up. Without giving Ditto a chance to struggle, he flung it away like a stone. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but Ditto's direction was coincidentally facing the crater. So, Amon didn't intend to pursue him anymore, and just stood there quietly, watching the show, his sneer undisguised. What? Kato Fishin was speechless. He had never expected Amon to be so distraught as to throw his Pokemon into the lava right in front of him. But his quick reaction was quick, and after the initial surprise, he was ready to respond immediately. At this point, He couldn't care less about looking cool. He quickly flung his cape back and rushed towards Ditto. But it was too late. Putting aside the question of Kato's hidden speed, whether he could keep up with Ditto's tumbling speed into the lava, everyone else was distracted by the previous battle. Furthermore, there was still some distance between Kato's hidden and the battlefield. This distance might not seem like much under normal circumstances, but at this moment, it felt like an insurmountable chasm. Just as the familiar scene was about to unfold once again, a figure reacted first. Before anyone else could react, Yu, leveraging his proximity to the crater, had already rushed out. Determined to rescue Ditto, the familiar scene unfolded before his eyes. This was not what Yu had hoped for. But this time, perhaps already wary of Amen, Yu appeared beside Ditto before it had even gotten far. He grabbed Ditto's lithe body and laid it bare in his arms. However, the force it delivered was beyond Yu's expectations, and the inertia of the ground forced him to take a few steps backward. Yu could even feel the scorching heat radiating from behind him. The sole of his shoe scraped against the ground, leaving a deep mark in front of him. He used his other foot to support himself. But as he tried to pull it back, he accidentally bumped against a stone near his foot. Just like that, it tumbled and tumbled before his eyes, crashing into the lava. He glanced at it with a lingering fear. The stone didn't even create a splash after falling into the lava. He breathed a heavy sigh of relief, and only then did Yu have time to look at the Ditto he held in his arms. While Ditto hadn't lost its fighting ability, it was already battered and bruised. Judging from its condition, it was likely no longer able to fight. Just then, Kato finally arrived. Seeing Ditto now cradled in Yu's arms, Fishin's face was filled with uncontrollable excitement. After a friendly nod to Yu, a gesture of greeting, Fishin lifted Ditto and carefully examined it. It was clear that Fishin was also a huge Pokémon enthusiast. The worry and anxiety on his face were unmistakable. "I've checked your Ditto. It's nothing serious. Just a few minor injuries sustained during the battle. The intense fighting has left him feeling a bit disoriented. Let him rest for a while." Yu wasn't the least bit angry at having his Ditto snatched from him. Instead, he grew fonder of Fishin and offered his explanation. "Well, thank you, Yu. I'll remember your favor of saving Ditto's life." After checking the Ditto's condition and seeing that it was exactly as Yu had described, he finally felt relieved. Although the monocle prevented him from clearly seeing Fishin's true face, he could still sense the seriousness in his words. Yu didn't refuse, but instead offered a friendly smile. "Then I look forward to that day." After a brief exchange of words, Yu and Fishin finally had time to turn their attention to Amen. "But now isn't the time to chat? Let's resolve this problem." Yu frowned slightly, clearly still feeling somewhat troubled by the current situation. "Oh, isn't he just a Pokémon bounty hunter? What's so troublesome about him? Perhaps he can indeed compete with Pokémon by himself with his high-tech equipment. But don't forget, we have the advantage in numbers, so why should we be afraid of him? Besides, his so-called shield and sonic camera are still in my hands." He showed off the two trophies in his hand, seemingly showing off in front of Yu, but in fact, his words were directed at Amen. "Damn. I really give you face. In that case, I will throw all your Pokémon into the magma and burn them to ashes." As if a sore spot was touched, Amen's face once again showed a hideous and terrifying smile, and then he took up his position again. Chapter 682 Strength. Even as he launched his charge, Amen continued to work, silently modifying and adjusting the data on his robotic armor. "Right, let's get rid of this immediate problem first." Yu agreed wholeheartedly with Fishin Kato's advice. However, he quickly scratched his head in embarrassment and asked, looking at Fishin with a hint of embarrassment. "Well, after the battle just now, it seems most of my Pokémon have lost their combat capabilities. Do you have any Pokémon?" Fishin Kato was completely shocked. He had only just appeared and had no idea how intense the battle had been. Furthermore, Amen suddenly unleashed his sonic weapon and began bombarding Yu's Pokémon. The ground was now littered with the bodies of Yu's Pokémon, their bodies incapacitated. Fishin Kato, eager to appear in time, hadn't noticed the Pokémon collapsing, assuming they were tired from the battle and resting for a while. But at this critical moment, Fishin, who had originally hoped to rely on his numerical advantage and adopt a siege tactic, was dealt a heavy blow the next moment. Yu unexpectedly informed him that all his Pokémon had lost their combat effectiveness. "Well, if that's the case, Then I can settle for the next best thing. Instead of the high-end Pokemon, I'll just use a few lower-tier ones. You don't have elite-level Pokemon like the Elite or Quasi-Elite, right? Seeing the gleam of Xiaozhi and Xiaoguang's eyes, Yu felt embarrassed to tell him the harsh truth. But the reality forced him to address this harsh and important matter. Well, even if you say so, we're indeed out of high-end Pokemon. Yu was now completely frustrated. There was nothing he could do. It was his fault for fighting so hard that he had completely exhausted all his resources. Even though Charmeleon had evolved into Charizard, its strength surpassing the elite level, it still couldn't withstand the finishing blow of Amen's highly destructive sonic weapon. Come on, tell me what Pokemon you still have that can fight? You can't leave me to do it all by myself. Kaito Fishin's face was filled with rage. He wanted to take out his glider and leave immediately, ignoring the situation. But then he thought of the old butler who had been with him for many years and the promise he had made to him during that incident. Kaito Fishin's eyes became more determined. He couldn't just give up like that. It was just one person, wasn't it? There were still people that the famous Kaito Fishin couldn't defeat. Let me count them. Completely oblivious to the seriousness of the situation, Yu even started counting his Pokemon that were still capable of fighting on his fingers. However, after counting, Yu was completely embarrassed. His face flushed, and his tone of voice when speaking to Kaito Fishin lacked the initial confidence. Well, I still have 3 Pokemon that are still capable of fighting, right? I didn't expect there were still 3 left. That's more than enough. Kaito Fishin's eyes lit up and he became excited when he heard the number Yu reported. He assumed every trainer carried at least 6 Pokemon, unless they were new trainers who hadn't even collected all 6. And given Yu's strength, he subconsciously assumed he had 6. And for someone as powerful as Yu to carry his main Pokemon, how could they be weak? Even if 1 or 2 were intended for cultivation, they should still be quite powerful. And those Pokemon that were now lying on the ground, almost losing their combat ability. Kaito Fishin naturally assumed they were Yu's traveling companions. Enough of the nonsense. I'll send out my Pokemon now. Together, we'll take down this arrogant fellow. What do you say? Yu had no idea that Kaito Fishin had thought of so many things in such a short period of time. He had assumed that Kaito Fishin himself had absolute confidence in his Pokemon. Therefore, Yu didn't hesitate at all. After nodding, he shouted to the sky, summoning all the Pokemon that he considered still capable of fighting to his side. Snorlax, Buzzbit, and Scrabble, prepare for battle. Haha, how can I fall behind? Prepare for a spectacular performance. Mugowl, Sandspur. Kaito Fishin immediately released 2 more powerful flying-type Pokemon. It was obvious that, with the exception of Ditto, Kaito Fishin must have focused on training flying-type Pokemon. But Yu finally felt relieved after thinking about it. After all, just hearing his name, you know that Kaito Fishin will be flying all day long. Without a few flying-type Pokemon to escort him, how can he fly in peace? However, when Kaito Fishin saw the 3 Pokemon that Yu had sent out that still had combat capabilities, his face darkened again. Oh my god. Yu, these are the 3 Pokemon you sent out. Only the Crawl is decent. Are you sure the rest of them are capable? And most importantly, if I'm not mistaken, Snorlax and Buzzbit haven't really grown up yet. Snorlax in particular is clearly still in its infancy. You're actually trying to trick me with these Pokemon? Hey, look at what you're saying. How can you call that a trick? Let's just say I'm not lying to you. These are the best Pokemon I can currently offer, okay? Yu was clearly unconvinced, somewhat annoyed that Kaito Fishin had the audacity to look down on his Pokemon. Don't be angry. What I said is true. Look at my Pokemon, then look at yours. Kaito Fishin leered at Yu with a slightly irritated look. As expected, the shift in his gaze shocked Yu completely. At a glance, the Pokemon sent by Kaito Fishin have all reached the king level, and looking at their auras, they are all quite strong, and are even slightly stronger than the Charizard that he just evolved. Chapter 683 Pokeball. As expected, as his eyes shifted, Yu was completely shocked. At a glance, the Pokemon sent by Kaito Fishin had all reached the king level, and judging by their impressive auras, each one was surprisingly strong, even slightly more powerful than his own newly evolved Charizard. But Yu quickly recovered from his shock and curled his lips with a hint of disdain. Tisk, what's so great about that? I believe my Pokemon will soon reach the king level and surpass you in time. Confidence was written all over Yu Yu's face. Don't ask why he was so confident. If you ask, it was because he had absolute faith in his Pokemon. And at that moment, the offensive had already reached everyone's attention. Although Yu Yu and Kato Fishin's chat and banter seemed to last for a long time, it was actually just a moment. Forget it, forget it. In the end, it's up to me to lead the way with my strength. Just win by lying down. Mkogle, use spin attack, and Sandfly, use Sandstorm. Stop looking down on me, okay? You only set out a few days earlier than me, and I've made you look like this. Scrabble, you guys go too. Don't let them underestimate you. Yu Yu had no intention of falling behind them and hurriedly gave orders. The battle was about to begin. But Yu Yu's side had more than just the advantage in numbers. Pokemon are always stronger than humans, even with their high-tech equipment. Then, as Sandfly unleashed Sandstorm, Amon raised his hand and fired several lasers, punching holes in the sandstorm. However, because all the high-tech equipment was used to deal with the sandstorm, this gave Mkogle an opportunity to exploit. With a vicious spinning attack, Amon's mechanical armor was pecked open, instantly creating a hole and sending parts flying. Furthermore, inspired by its master, the scorpion crab regained its composure. A single volley of water, blasting through the cracks in the sandstorm, instantly penetrated the barrier and struck Amon. However, it must be said that Amon, a renowned Pokemon bounty hunter who battles not with Pokemon but with his own body and mechanical equipment, possessed exceptional physical fortitude. While not a warrior, a careful calculation would place him at least to the level of a 5th or 6th tier warrior. And what does a 5th or 6th tier warrior mean? At least, even after enduring a Pokemon's attack, his formidable physique wouldn't succumb immediately. He might even be able to exploit the opportunity to escape. Seeing the situation dire, Amon couldn't care less about Pokemon. Without the slightest hesitation, he turned and immediately fled. But in that moment, he glanced wistfully at Moltres and Suicune, now lying on the ground, completely defenseless. If it weren't for the quietness of the moment, he would have wanted to beat his chest and stamp his feet, howling to the heavens. Ah! My sacred beasts, those were all my precious little coins. You're going to do this, because I miss them. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. You want to escape? Do you think you can get away so easily? Stay here. Let me hand you over to Miss Joy and make amends. Seeing Amon actually trying to escape, Yu Yu was immediately displeased. He snorted coldly. Perhaps the little story between Kato Fishin and Amon could be cleared up now. But Yu Yu wasn't about to let him go. After all, he had pushed Xiaoxu into danger before. If I hadn't risked my life to save him, and if Charmeleon hadn't suddenly evolved into Charizard, I wouldn't be standing here right now. I'd probably have been reduced to ash. So, seeing Amon actually trying to escape at this moment, Yu, how could he tolerate this? Giant crab, don't let that guy get away. Use the freeze ray. I say, are you done yet? I'm about to give in, and you're still ungrateful. Amon, about to flee, felt a chill on his back. Turning around, he saw a freeze ray, bearing the power to freeze everything, steadily approaching him. He cursed softly, but the situation didn't allow him to respond. Seeing the freeze ray approaching, Amon didn't bother trying again and quickly revealed his life-saving trump card. The backpack he'd been carrying, seemingly ordinary, suddenly took on a new, technological feel. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that a launcher suddenly appeared at the bottom of the backpack. Just when the freezing ray was about to hide him, Amon, with the help of the backpack launcher, soared into the sky and dodged the freezing ray. And it wasn't over yet. After dodging the freezing ray, Amon knew he couldn't stay jealous any longer, so he quickly activated the thrusters, flying higher and higher. It seemed as if he was stimulated by Yu Yu's behavior just now. If you looked at him from the front, you would find that Amon's face was full of ferocious hatred. Damn it, I didn't want to do this. But since you forced me to do all this, I can only let you suffer again. Thinking of this, a red and white Pokeball suddenly appeared in his hand. Wow, that's quite unexpected. There's even Pokemon. Isn't it said that those who don't use Pokemon look down on them? I didn't expect that we'd actually have to use Pokemon now. With Yu Yu's current eyesight, even though Kato Fishin was already flying at a considerable distance, he could still vaguely spot what Amon was holding. A Pokeball? That's quite unusual. Is it planning to come back and fight us to the death? Yu Yu wasn't the only one filled with surprise. And Kato Fishin, who also had excellent eyesight? Who knows? But coming back for a fight to the death, isn't that even better? Then I'll have the chance to capture it and send it to Miss Junsha for a proper transformation. Yu rubbed his hands, looking eager to try. Chapter 684 Escape? Ha hey, stop it, I know what you're up to. You mean, take advantage of him coming down and teach him a lesson? With your current strength? A quasi-king, an elite, and a normal level Pokemon? Don't be offended, with your level of strength, I really do look down on you. Kato Fishin was irritated, glancing at Yu standing beside him. His words seemed harsh, but the teasing was obvious. Hey, stop looking down on me, okay? I don't even need all 3 of my Pokemon to take him down. If I hadn't been concerned about him wielding those sonic weapons that threaten Pokemon, I could have easily knocked down 5 of those guys. Come on, I'll show you how I can take on 10 of them alone. Yu also looked irritated, but that didn't stop him from warming up. Every joint in his body cracked. Meanwhile, just as Yu was about to take advantage of Amen's Pokeball to launch his Pokemon for a proper clash, he wasn't disappointed. As expected, he dropped the Pokeball. However, the Pokeball didn't bounce off mid-fall, releasing a red glow enveloping the Pokemon. Instead, the entire Pokeball glowed with an unknown white light, flickering like stars. However, in the twilight, the light seemed incredibly faint. What's going on with this Pokeball? It's flickering like a bomb about to explode. Yu was a bit puzzled. After all, he'd been in the underworld for so long, and was mostly used to ancient, cold weapons. Suddenly, he was exposed to this high-tech equipment, and he was a bit overwhelmed. Compared to Yu's bewilderment, Kato Fishin was clearly a seasoned veteran. Not only was he used to it, but his professions were also mixed, as he was a magician and a thief. This also made Kato Fishin feel so comfortable with high-tech gadgets. Needless to say, the Pokeballs that Amen was able to drop were the same ones he usually used when committing crimes, upside down. The only difference was that his Pokeballs were designed to create a sense of ambience and surprise. They were nothing like Amen's, which had been specially modified to become bombs. Therefore, for a moment, Kato Fishin was a little hard to spot. He even squinted, scrutinizing the gradually falling Pokeball. But the further he got, the more his eyes widened. He even cursed unconsciously. Holy crap! That's not a Pokeball. It's a bomb. Run! Kato Fishin roared, a mixture of shock and anger. Following closely behind, he was seen to leap off into the distance like a nimble monkey. Bomb! Yu's reaction was also very quick, but he didn't react like Kato Fishin. Instead, he stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the so-called bombs of Pokeballs that were gradually falling. His peripheral vision flickered to the Pokemon he'd barely managed to retract, now lying on the ground, unable to fight. And then there were Serena and the other 2, who hadn't even turned around, their panic-stupefied expression even at the mere mention of the word bomb. Yu made a firm decision. I didn't expect it to be a bomb. It's just a bomb, so what? Today, I'll show you, this so-called phantom thief, what true high-level maneuvering is. He gripped the Yajiao gun tightly, as if it would grant him boundless power, enough to handle the current crisis. Ha, I didn't expect there were such fools in the world. They're completely out of their minds. They could have escaped from the bomb cellar, but they didn't. And they're still trying to show off. Amen's arrogant. Slightly disdainful words echoed, clearly indicating he hadn't flown very far. He had only created a safe distance from Yu and the others, yet from this distance he could clearly observe everything happening on the ground. Of course, he could also see everything Yu and Kato Fishin did. What a shame. I'm afraid those Pokemon will be reduced to ash after this bomb hits. Amen's words were filled with regret for the Pokemon that collapsed to the ground, completely defenseless. After all, those Pokemon still had some strength and could probably fetch a good price. Especially since there were 2 legendary beasts among them. However, it was likely that only Moltres would survive the ensuing explosion, as Amen knew the full force of the bomb he had released. Regardless of whether these Pokemon would be killed or severely injured in the explosion, the sheer force would undoubtedly completely collapse the area surrounding the crater. These defenseless Pokemon would then likely be left to plunge into the lava to be washed away. Hey, what the hell is this high-end maneuvering? If you don't run for your life now, do you really think this is a game? High-end maneuvering. He had already taken a few steps, but upon hearing Yu's slightly arrogant voice, Kato Fishin's movements completely froze. It was as if time had stopped at that moment. Only the constant blinking of his small, dotted eyes indicated that time had not stopped, and everything continued in an orderly manner. After Amen's reminder, Kato Fishin finally realized what was happening. Yet, how could he have forgotten? While the detonation of this Pokeball bomb wasn't particularly powerful, it contained a special power that could instantly collapse certain structures, including the crater walls. Therefore, without full preparation, the hang glider behind him wouldn't be able to take off instantly and would eventually be caught in the bomb. Instead of struggling in vain, why not see what Yu had in his power to turn the tide? And after all the previous events, he was very eager to know what kind of person Yu was. Chapter 685 Stalemate. Of course it's a high-level operation. Watch your eyes carefully from now on, and don't blink. Yu didn't retreat from this momentum, completely concentrating on handling the situation ahead. Yu lifted the Yageo spear and slung it over his shoulder. Then, his arms began to exert force, the entire spear shaft like a taut bowstring. It seemed as if Yu relaxed even a little, the gum gun in his hand would pierce someone with lightning speed. Yu's roars continued to rise, and with each roar, the force in his hands increased. But even as the force in his hands continued to grow, Yu's eyes never left the small Pokeball-shaped bomb. Finally, the Pokeball-shaped bomb fell, but just before it hit the ground, it exploded. Yu suddenly pulled out the barrel of his Yageo gun, and the Pokeball-shaped bomb instantly flew back at an even faster speed than when it came. Before anyone could react, the Pokeball-shaped bomb instantly smashed into Amen, who was currently flying in midair, watching the show with a look of detachment. Amen, who had originally been gloating, suddenly felt like he was on a roller coaster. His initial expression was like this, Cyrillic letter X dot. Then like this, B, and finally like this, degree, Greek letter Psi. One can imagine his current state of mind. This truly proves the saying, excessive joy breeds sorrow. Amen, who had initially appeared somewhat happy and excited, now looked completely different. However, because he had not anticipated Yu's sudden action, and had been caught off guard by the previous scene, it was too late for Amen to react. He could only glance sadly at the bomb-like Pokeball lying in his arms before a tearful smile appeared. Then, with a resounding explosion, Amen's figure instantly vanished from the sky above where he had been standing. It was completely unrecognizable that there had been someone watching the other person's predicament with a spectator's attitude. Damn! Is this even humanly possible? That kind of strength? My goodness, if I were to be lashed out with that, I'd probably be broken in two. Kato Fishin, with a lingering fear, looked up at the sky, then at the Yageo gun, which Yu had just pulled out and hadn't yet retracted. HMPH, I told you, don't underestimate me. Do you really think some technological weapon is so impressive? This silver spear in my hand will still pierce you. Yu completely ignored Kato Fishin's shocked expression and calmly returned the Yageo gun to the stored ring. Okay, now that the unnecessary inconvenience has gone, it's just us. Don't you think we should talk about what's going on between us? Yu seemed to finally remember that Kato Fishin was still around. He looked at him indifferently, completely betraying the impression that they had once fought side by side. Oh. What's going on between us? What's going on between us? Big brother, don't let people misunderstand me. I'm a pure and innocent man. My childhood sweetheart is even waiting for me to marry her. If you do something like this, I'll be doomed. Kato Fishin acted completely nonchalant, even his words dripping with joking. Yu had no intention of joking with the man before him. Perhaps he had been right to help him. But remember, that was because they had a common enemy. Now that the enemy was gone, civil war would surely follow. Moreover, from the very beginning, Yu hadn't dared to underestimate Kato Fishin. After all, regardless of his identity, the combat power of the Pokemon he possessed was already a force to be reckoned with. And while he might appear very brave, that was only an appearance. Who would still resort to cold weapons these days? Except for a group of warriors like them. Otherwise, everyone would keep up with the times and resolve everything in the world through Pokemon battles, okay? I told you not to be nervous. I really don't mean any harm. Do you think I'd believe you? If I don't mean any harm, you'd find a place like this. Don't tell me you just glided through the sky on your hang glider and ended up here. You know, this place is very remote. Sometimes, you won't even see a single bird-type Pokemon all day long. Yu curled his lips in disdain, reciting every possible excuse that Kato Fishin might come up with. Hey, you, I've suddenly realized that besides being incredibly amazing in every way, you can actually predict the future. I wasn't going to tell you, but since you've already discovered it, I have to. That's right, I just rode around on my hang glider and got to hear. Kato Fishin looked incredibly serious, his gaze etched with even greater gravity as he looked at you. I don't have time for jokes. Better get back to the point of explaining your purpose. That would be beneficial for both you and me, wouldn't it? It would also prevent our mutual rapport from being ruined. Yu wasn't buying Kato Fishin's playful banter, and his expression gradually grew serious. However, the way his eyes kept flickering towards the swarm of incapacitated Pokémon on the ground betrayed his inner thoughts. Indeed, Yu was deeply concerned for the incapacitated Pokémon on the ground. After all, the previous battles had been relatively manageable, until they resorted to using sonic weapons for finishing blows. Yu was becoming somewhat uncertain, as he had no idea how harmful this sonic weapon could be. Furthermore, his expertise lay in medical martial arts, saving lives in combat. He had no experience with the sensory evaluation of technology. This led to Yu's extreme anxiety in this uncertain situation, and he wished he could immediately take Charizard, who had already lost his ability to fight, to the nearby Pokémon Center for medical treatment. Chapter 686 Separation. This led to Yu's extreme anxiety in this unpredictable situation. He wished he could immediately take Charizard and the others, now incapacitated, to the nearest Pokémon Center for medical attention. But as the saying goes, the more you think about reality, the more it contradicts your expectations. Yu was incredibly anxious, but out of caution following the initial incident, he remained completely wary of Kato Fishin. If he didn't reveal the purpose of her visit, he'd likely be unable to sleep or eat. Oh, I told you, why don't you believe me? I was just taking a hang glider for a spin. I accidentally ended up here. Originally, I wasn't even going to intervene, just sit back and watch. But in the end, the kind animals decided to help you, and that's how it all happened. Kato Fishin's face was filled with innocent and aggrieved expression. What the hell was Yu up to? It was rare for him to be so kind and merciful as to help an outsider. And yet, he doesn't understand, doesn't appreciate it, and even doubts himself. Sob, 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 I feel wronged, so sad. But I just don't want to say I'm going to piss you off to death. I can't believe a phantom thief like you could be so kind. Don't think I don't know you're almost like Pokémon bounty hunters. Without profit, you wouldn't do anything. And I believe you wouldn't do anything without profit, especially when it comes to legendary beasts like Moltres. Yu's questioning was sharp, even a little aggressive. How can I look down on you? Phantom Thief Fishin, can't I, for once, do something just because there's no profit? And if I say I did it purely to help you, what do you think? Phantom Thief Fishin wasn't in a good mood either, and Yu's barrage of questions visibly irritated him. But this time, it was Yu who was left speechless. Yet, this was probably all preconceived notion. But his years of experience in the underworld told him not to believe what the Phantom Thief Fishin was saying. Come on, I'm sure you won't believe me. But rest assured, I have no ill intentions this time. No, I didn't have any ill intentions when I sold it before. Phantom Thief Fishin felt he had gone too far. Why bother saying so much to someone who didn't understand his situation? So he calmed down. Oh, really? But then why do you keep stealing other people's valuable jewelry? And jewelry is just jewelry, right? There are plenty of them in jewelry stores. Why do you have to pick on the heirlooms of the rich and powerful? I think you're just bored. Yu seemed convinced by Phantom Thief Fishin, and his expression softened considerably. He was even in the mood for some banter. Tisk, you're just a big shot with a simple mind. You don't understand even after all I've said, Phantom Thief Fishin snorted. Yes, I don't understand. But at least let me know the reason. If you keep going like this, I'll be on edge, terrified I'll become your target, and that'll be the end of me. Come on, are you still worried about becoming my target? You sounded quite arrogant earlier. I just left earlier than you, so I'm a little stronger now. Kato Fishin shrugged, his face indifferent. You, alright, I know what you want to ask. You can completely treat this as a performance art, because only in this way can I perfectly display my magic. With that, Kato Fishin pulled a Pokeball from each of his trouser pockets, putting away Macaque and Desert Dragonfly. I know you're probably still suspicious of me at this moment, but from your perspective, I can understand you. To show I have no ill intentions, I'll take my leave now." He silently turned around, facing away from Yu. At this moment, Yu looked at Kato Fishin and wanted to say something to explain, but he opened his mouth and no sound came out. Kato Fishin took advantage of this time and conjured up a Pidgeot out of thin air like a magic trick. Facing this scene, Yu could be said to be no longer surprised, but when he saw Pidgeot, his pupils couldn't help but condense slightly. "Good guy, I didn't expect this Pidgeot to be a king-level Pokémon. But this is what makes it interesting. If its strength is too low, I have no motivation to surpass it." At this time, Pidgeot had already flown up, but Kato Fishin did not take out the glider when escaping as before, but jumped slightly and grabbed Pidgeot's claws with his hands. Let Pidgeot carry his body directly into the air. "Then goodbye. I'll look forward to our next meeting. I hope you'll be even stronger by then, and that I'll be eager to fight you." "How ho ho!" Pidgeot Kato Hitten's loud laughter echoed in the sky, mixed with Pidgeot's shrill cry. Then, Kato Hitten and Pidgeot grew taller and taller, until they became tiny dots and disappeared completely. Yu made no move during this time, simply watching silently, amazed at Hitten's departure. And after everything vanished from sight, Yu muttered something, almost to himself, but also in response to Kato Hitten's previous words. "Yes, I'm looking forward to our next meeting. I hope to have a good fight with you, too." Yu, come and take a look. Something terrible has happened. What's going on? What's going on? How could this happen? Meanwhile, Yu was lost in the battle scenario of a future reunion with Kato Hitten. The slightly uneasy voices of Serena and the other two girls kept echoing in Yu's ears, until he woke up from his deep thoughts. "Alice, what are you thinking about? The things at the moment are not yet resolved." Yu slapped his forehead lightly in annoyance, and said weakly. Chapter 687 Injury. "Yu, come and take a look. Moltres, it." Hearing Serena's slightly sorrowful words, Yu, who had seemed weak, suddenly jolts to life, instantly perking up. He even leaps up in excitement, his voice amplified countless times. What did you say? Moltres, what's wrong with it?" Yu's voice trembles slightly, fearing to hear something he doesn't want to hear. "Maldito, Moltres, it's dying. Yu, come and take a look at it." Yu's scalp explodes, unable to believe that a legendary Pokémon could be so ill. He leaps at Moltres in 2 steps, not even caring for his own Pokémon, who have collapsed on the ground and need them. Yu's heart was now completely consumed by the words "Moltenko is no good." He didn't care about anything else. He roughly pushed the 3 women aside and began to perform CPR. Xiaoxu, who had been pulled aside for the rare opportunity, spoke with a touch of annoyance. Not only that, she stretched out her jade-white fingers, formed a fist, and violently tapped Serena's head. "Yu, don't listen to Serena's nonsense. Moltenko is not bad, it's just lost its fighting ability." Yu finally calmed down a little after hearing this, and just as he was about to let out a deep breath, Xiaoxu's voice rang out again. "Although Moltenko has lost its fighting ability, its current condition is indeed not optimistic." "What?" Yu was immediately furious, not only mentally but physically. "What's going on? What's going on? You said nothing was wrong at first, but now you're saying it's not optimistic. Xiaoxu, can you please just tell me everything at once? You're talking so breathlessly. My mood is on a roller coaster. If this doesn't go well, you might give me a heart attack." Xiaoxu, embarrassed by Yu's words, lowered her head slightly, her fingers twirling together. "Sorry. I didn't mean to. It's just that I can't quite put my finger on the situation." "Yu, you're a skilled doctor, so why don't you take a look at him?" "Okay, let me take a look." Yu couldn't think of anything else at this point, and quickly squatted down to check on Moltres. Perhaps because of the previous fight, or perhaps because of the events that had occurred before, Moltres hadn't completely let down her guard and remained in fighting form. Even then, the flames on her body hadn't gone out. Like a spark, they continued to burn. However, since Yu's training was practically the quintessence of traditional Chinese medicine, some physical contact was inevitable. Perhaps it was due to the terrifying heat and intensity of Moltres' flames. Yu didn't rashly reach out to touch Moltres' body. Instead, he slowly extended his hand, enveloped by his inner energy. His teacher's inner energy protected his hands, but even before he touched Moltres' body, Yu could still feel the burning sensation. As Yu's hands gradually lowered, the burning sensation intensified. The protective layer of inner energy that had adhered to the skin, channeling the inner energy, began to gradually disintegrate. I thought the flames on the fiery horse were already incredibly hot, but I didn't expect Moltres' to be even hotter. It's completely unexpected. Yu frowned deeply as he felt a constant burning sensation in his palm. For a moment, he even considered giving up on probing Moltres' body. But who was Yu? He was a ruthless spearman, willing to sacrifice his own life. What was a mere burning flame to him? Therefore, at this moment, he completely let go. Although his internal energy still remained attached to his palm, it was as if it were completely useless. With a slight frown, Yu began to carefully examine the Moltres' current condition. However, as he probed deeper and deeper, Yu's two relatively handsome eyebrows furrowed deeper and deeper. "How is Yu?" Serena watched anxiously from the side. Seeing Yu's brows furrowing, she couldn't help but ask worriedly. The situation isn't optimistic. Although Moltres has lost its combat capability and entered a self-preservation state, its physical condition isn't very good right now. It's likely due to the paralysis effect from the Divine Bird agent, which instantly disabled it, and the repeated sonic attacks, leaving it severely damaged. Serena, who had no medical background, was confused, but Xiaoxu, the only one of the three women with medical knowledge and a high-level Pokémon breeder, immediately understood what Yu meant about Moltres. Dang also frowned slightly, a hint of worry on his face. "What should we do? We didn't expect the situation to be this dire." "Yes, we didn't expect it to be this bad. The only option now is, of course, immediate medical attention. However, due to limited resources, I can't guarantee a complete recovery. We can only send it to the Pokémon Center for emergency treatment." Yu sighed as he spoke, but his movements continued unabated. He silently channeled his internal energy, hoping to alleviate Moltres' injuries. After all, internal energy is ultimately generated from the purest energy between heaven and earth. It possesses remarkable effects on both the human body and Pokémon, boasting a wide range of applications. But if we want to get to the Pokémon Center, should it be quite far from here? Serena directly recounted their current situation. "Pokémon Center, Pokémon Center. Yet, we found the Pokémon Center." Ayer, who had been silent until then, suddenly let out a delighted cry. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 688 Promise. Pokémon Center. I found the Pokémon Center. Following Ayer's delighted cry, Serena and Xiaoxu immediately scrambled forward. Their heads huddled together again, carefully examining the Pokémon navigation map Serena always carried. Let me see. We found the nearest Pokémon Center in Bake City. Bake City? I thought it was supposed to be quite far from where we are now." Serena's voice rang out in confusion once again, and the previously excited atmosphere quieted down once again, a thick atmosphere of awkwardness. "Yes, we found the nearest Pokémon Center, but the one in Bake City is just too far away." Xiaoxu was now somewhat discouraged. "Bake City? Great, I'll remember that." It was Yu, who had been concentrating on stabilizing Moltres' injuries, who suddenly spoke, his words brimming with seriousness and solemnity. "No way. Yu, you're not really going to Bake City, are you?" "Bake City is so far from here," Xiaozu exclaimed in surprise, a bit incredulous. Although she also desperately wanted to create Moltres, the harsh reality before her made her hesitate. "But we have no choice now. We can't just stand by and watch Moltres suffer like this. And if we don't stop it, Moltres' life could be in danger at any moment." Yu's words were filled with certainty, clearly indicating that getting Moltres to the Pokémon Center in Bake City was a must. But, in its current state, can Moltres really hold up until we get him to Bake City? Serena was clearly still a little worried. "Ah, Yu, your hand!" Xiaozu suddenly screamed, then rushed towards Yu. Before he could react, she removed the hand he had placed on Moltres, channeling his inner energy, and held it in her palm, examining it closely. "Yu, what's wrong with your hand?" Serena and Ayer, reacting to Xiaoxu's exclamation, rushed forward to examine it. Seeing the hand, now utterly burned and utterly distorted, held in Xiaoxu's palm, they felt a mixture of heartache and anger. "Yu, how did your hands get burned like this? Quick, get the medicine." Serena frantically retrieved the spare burn medicine from her backpack. Without giving Yu a chance to protest, she grabbed his hand, sprayed it with the medicine, and carefully cleaned it. That's Molter's burn, right? Yu, how could you be so foolish? You know, Molter's heat is so intense that even ordinary fire Pokemon wouldn't be able to withstand it. Why did you put your hand up there? You're really driving us crazy. How could you be so careless with yourself? Serena and the other two began to lecture Yu, their seemingly harsh words brimming with concern and heartache. And despite their words of severity, they were actually quite used to Yu's behavior. This time, however, the flames from Molter's were incredibly hot, burning a large area of Yu's palm, leaving a bright red mark. This was what made the three women worried. While blaming him, they harbored concern. After all, the Yu they knew was just that kind of person, willing to sacrifice everything for those around him. He would also selflessly dedicate himself to Pokemon, even if it meant getting hurt or being covered in bruises. But that wouldn't change Yu's so-called heart. It's okay, it's just a minor injury. Serena grasped his hand, gently wiping and caressing it. Yu's face didn't even blush, and he felt a little embarrassed, his eyes darting around. How can you call this a minor injury? It's all red. It must be painful. Serena pouted in dissatisfaction, clearly thinking Yu was just trying to comfort her. Serena, there's really no need to bother. I'll deal with this minor injury later. The most important thing now is to resolve the Molter's situation. Let's hurry and get Molter's to Big City for treatment while everyone still has time. Yu didn't wait for the three women to object. He immediately unloaded his thoughts. Or, if it really doesn't work out, let's split up. Just like last time, I'll take Molter's to the Big City Pokemon Center first, and you can follow us. We'll meet up at the Big City Pokemon Center later. But as soon as Yu finished his thought, he couldn't help but regret it. He instinctively wanted to shut up, but it was too late. He could only cover his mouth in frustration, as if trying to cover his ears to steal the bell, and feign indifference. However, the subsequent actions of the three daughters proved that Yu had listened to every word he had said. Suddenly, an angry expression appeared on their pretty faces. Even Serena, who had been gently wiping Yu's burns, was affected by her emotions and subconsciously increased her movements. Yu, what did you say? You haven't forgotten what you promised us, have you? You, such a bad guy, actually want to abandon us again? Believe it or not, we'll tie you up right now. You won't stay with us for the rest of your life. As if they had been holding back for a long time, Yu's words were like a fuse that ignited them completely. Each of them shed their usual gentle demeanor and began to speak like a machine gun. Serena's unconscious increase in force suddenly touched the burn on Yu's hand, and caught him off guard. He couldn't help but gasp. This time, though, it was as if she were truly angry at herself, even though she displayed a pitiful demeanor. However, Serena and the other two remained unmoved, instead staring intently at Yu with their beautiful eyes, as if waiting for Yu to give them a reasonable explanation and answer. Chapter 689 Plan. This, Yu immediately broke out in a cold sweat, feeling himself under unprecedented pressure. If he gave a poor answer, he would be facing the abyss of hell. Believe it or not, after traveling with Yu for so long, Xiaoxia and the other two girls had come to understand him quite well, and they were able to grasp his lifeblood at the right moment. At this moment, Yu felt a deep sense of distress. Even if he could have faced a warrior of a higher level, it would have been far better than the current situation. Or even if he had found 100 people to challenge him in a Pokemon battle. But he had to face the questioning of three girls. How could he possibly handle this? I was wrong. I wasn't just talking, I didn't actually put it into practice. Huh? You still want to actually put it into practice? That's why we're treating you this way, that's right. Otherwise, do you think we'll still treat you this way after you actually put it into practice? 3 death glares were cast at Yu simultaneously, making him feel like he was being pricked. Okay, I admit my mistake. From now on, no matter what happens, I won't separate us again. Is that okay? Yu could only hastily admit his mistake and repeat his promise. After hearing Yu's promise, his beloved son and daughter finally smiled again. Hey, Yu, how's your hand now? Is it okay? Serena, I know you're just too obsessed with Pokemon, but you don't have to be so careless. Serena's expression changed with incredible speed. Previously, she had been so aggressive and questioning, but now she was more gentle than anything. It's okay, Yu quickly pulled his hand free and made a move to reach for Moltres, channeling his inner energy into it once more to stabilize its internal injuries. Yu, no, you can't do this. If you keep going like this, your hand will probably be broken. Xiaozu, overcome with anxiety, immediately stepped forward to stop him. But before she could even get close, Yu pushed her away. We can't afford to drag it on like this. If we simply don't find a solution, I'll have to use my inner energy to keep Moltres alive. Otherwise, even if we get to the Pokémon Center in Big City, Moltres won't be seriously injured or crippled, but at least it'll be left with a residual disease. But, Xiaozu was choked by this, speechless. Yu's words made so much sense that she didn't know how to refute them. It's nothing, but just follow my method for now. We can only take it one step at a time. No. Even so, I can't just stand by and watch your hands become useless. Meanwhile, as Yu and Xiaozu were deadlocked, neither willing to give in, Air, who had been quietly researching information to the side after receiving Yu's assurance, suddenly let out a delighted laugh as if she had discovered a treasure trove. How I found it, I really did. After her laughter, Air hurried forward to interrupt the two people in the standoff. Okay, I'm telling you two to stop arguing. There are ways to get to K City. As expected, Air's announcement was like a depth charge, instantly blowing Yu's mind. Everyone looked at Air in astonishment, then a wave of joy. After all, everyone present was kind-hearted, loving and caring about Pokémon. The previous stalemate was simply because there was no way to find a better solution. Now that Air said there was a new solution, it must not be aimless. So there must be a new way to solve this problem. Air, please tell me quickly, what is the solution? Yu was getting impatient at this moment. Air knew that she couldn't delay any longer, so she didn't keep him in suspense. She simply showed the map in her hand, pointing from one path to another. Here. Is that the place? If I remember correctly, shouldn't this be a river connecting to the sea? Air, you're not planning to let us row across, are you? But putting that aside, in this situation, we don't have any water Pokémon to help us. Even if we did, we would still need to find a boat. Yu didn't say anything, just listened quietly, waiting for Air's subsequent explanation. No, you misunderstood. Perhaps you haven't been here before, but I've been there before. And right now, that river is no longer there. A cross-sea bridge has been built across it. Construction on this bridge was nearly complete a few months ago. It should be operational by now, and most importantly, it's motorized, then we can ride our bicycles directly from one end of the country to Big City. Serena seemed particularly excited. After all, if they were to take the normal route, even if they traveled non-stop from the crater overnight, it would take at least 3 or 4 days to reach Big City. And in those 3 or 4 days, there were many complications. Yu had no confidence in his ability to stabilize Moltres. But taking the cross-sea bridge would be a different story. Not to mention the convenience, the motorized traffic alone would significantly speed up their journey. If they set out now, it would only take about 2 or 3 hours to get from one end of the bridge to the other. Okay, if that's the case, then let's not waste any more time, pack our bags, and head to that bridge now. Looking at the sun, which hadn't yet fully risen, Yu hurriedly boosted morale and arranged the tasks. Everyone, try to reach that cross-sea bridge before noon. Then, we'll rest and regroup and head to Big City immediately. Serena and the other 2 girls naturally had no objections and nodded in agreement. Then, with the help of the Pokémon that still had combat capabilities, they began to clean up the mess. Yu, after collecting all of his incapacitated Pokémon into his angry Pokéballs, quietly returned to Moltres' side. Chapter 690 Hesitation. After Yu collected all his incapacitated Pokémon into his angry Pokéballs, he silently returned to Moltres' side. After a moment's silence, Yu finally crouched down, completely ignoring the burning flames on Moltres' body. He reached out and gently caressed Moltres' body. Malsec, hold on for a moment. We'll take you to Big City for treatment right now. Believe me, I will make sure you're back to health, so you can once again spread your flaming wings and soar through the molten lava. After saying this, Yu seemed to have no more words to say. Looking at Moltres, whose body was now shrouded in faint arcs of electricity and in extreme pain, he was speechless for a moment. At this moment, the Moltres he faced once again faced a problem. Moltres had not only lost its combat ability, but it was also a wild Pokémon. It had not yet been captured, let alone contained in a Pokéball for easy transport. At this point, if Moltres were to be taken to the big city Pokémon Center for treatment, it would be far too large. Furthermore, since Moltres wasn't contained in a Pokéball, it wouldn't be easy to carry, and they wouldn't be able to transport it. Even if it could be transported, with Yiyu's power as a Grandmaster, it wouldn't be impossible to transport Moltres from this location to the big city Pokémon Center. If he could rest briefly during the journey, it wouldn't be impossible. The most important thing is that even though it has lost its combat capabilities, the flames within it still burn, though not as vigorously as when it's conscious. Even so, facing these flames that could be extinguished at any moment, Yiyu would still be burned even if he mobilized all his internal energy. If the burns were only momentary, Yiyu could still hold on. However, the burning persisted, and even a steely man would find it difficult to withstand, let alone Yiyu. As for using Pokéballs to capture Pokémon, this high-tech technique might work for ordinary Pokémon. However, when it comes to legendary creatures like Moltres, you need to gain its approval before even the most ordinary Pokéball can capture it. Otherwise, even if Moltres is already incapacitated, capturing it is still extremely difficult. Unless you can use more advanced Pokéballs, capturing it is impossible. Whether it's coincidence or fate, Yiyu just happens to have a high-level Pokéball, the Blaze Ball. It was a gift from Professor Oak when Yiyu set out on his journey. However, he hadn't used it since the beginning, simply because he hadn't encountered a Pokémon that caught his eye. But he had a feeling that his Blaze Ball was no longer safe, and that he would have to leave today. While this might seem a blessing to ordinary people, Yiyu now saw it as a problem. Because Yiyu didn't like to take advantage of others' misfortunes. Pokémon acquisitions were always consensual. Or perhaps he defeated his opponent fairly and squarely with his own strength, then captured him with a Pokéball. Instead of taking advantage of someone's misfortune and then taking advantage of them, he was losing all respect as a Pokémon trainer. Of course, this might seem hypocritical to many, who might even dismiss Yiyu's actions. But Yiyu knew perfectly well that if your captured Pokémon didn't receive its approval or conduct, then this phrase perfectly described what would happen next. You might have its body, but you'd never have its heart. Even if you captured it with a Pokéball. Whether it obeyed your commands or not was a question of whether it would. Simply taking advantage of someone's misfortune would undoubtedly make it deeply disobey you. This also creates a very real possibility that after you send a Pokémon out, it will not only disobey your orders but may even turn against you and beat you up. To achieve your goal, you must not only possess the Pokémon's body, but also its heart. Furthermore, a crucial point is that once a Pokémon, whether legendary or ordinary, is captured by a trainer using a Pokéball, an invisible spiritual contract forms within it. This ethereal bond creates an inexplicable connection between the Pokémon and its trainer. This connection can create a lingering psychological scar for a trainer who captures and then releases a Pokémon. Even if the Pokémon dislikes the trainer, it can still be seen as abandoned and useless. This is something no Pokémon can accept. With the exception of those with more friendly dispositions towards humans, beautiful Pokémon possess a certain pride. That pride is about not being abandoned or looked down upon by a trainer, regardless of whether the trainer captured it intentionally or not. In short, if a trainer captures a Pokémon and then abandons it without responsibility, it will likely leave a shadow in the heart of every Pokémon, a shadow that is extremely detrimental to its future health and development. Therefore, after considering all these factors, Yiyu was deeply hesitant. Was Moltres comfortable or uncomfortable? Firstly, Yiyu truly loved every Pokémon, and therefore, it tried its best not to harm any. Secondly, there was Moltres' concern. He didn't know if Moltres would recognize the trainer who had taken advantage of the opportunity to capture it. If Moltres turned his back on the trainer, wouldn't Yiyu be so humiliated that he would cry his heart out? However, with this thought in mind, Yiyu faced even more headaches. Because of the two paths before him, no matter which one he chose, it would ultimately harm the Pokémon. Chapter 691 Departure. If Moltres turned against him, wouldn't Yiyu be so humiliated that he'd cry his heart out? But the more he thought about it, the more headaches he faced. Of the two paths before him, no matter which he chose, it would ultimately harm the Pokémon. Flame at this point, perhaps because of the severity of its injuries, Moltres, now unconscious and unable to fight, let out a sleepy, mumbling cry. Molten, you're so good. You just went to sleep and could have been done with it. Instead, you left me with this mess to clean up. Just as Yiyu shook his head and smiled bitterly, Serena and the others had finally finished packing, and for the umpteenth time, they urged them to get ready. Yu, are you ready? Why are you so much slower than us girls this time? Hurry up, or we probably won't be able to make it today even with our bikes. Hey, I'm coming. Just wait a moment, it'll be done soon. Yu knew he had little time to hesitate and had to make a decision quickly. In that case, Moltres will be the one to be offended. Even if you blame me, hate me, or hit me, I'll take the consequences. After a fierce mental struggle, Yu finally gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Although he subconsciously hated having his Pokémon hate him, if he had to choose between right and wrong, Yu would rather capture Moltres now and then let it go later, leaving me to hate, blame, or even hit him. He was happy too. After all, saving the life of a legendary beast was a good thing. Even if the process and the outcome were unsatisfactory, it was enough. Having made up his mind, Yu didn't hesitate. He immediately dug out his long unused flame ball from his storage ring. After taking a look at the vivid flame patterns on the flame ball, he didn't toss it as he usually did when recovering a Pokéball. Instead, he gripped it tightly in his hand and thrust it out without delay. The button in the center of the Pokéball gently tapped against Moltres. The intense heat from Moltres didn't affect the flame ball's function. The flame ball truly lived up to its name, a weapon specifically designed to capture Pokémon of the same type. As Yu watched anxiously, Moltres transformed into a streak of red light and was immediately captured by the flame ball. Without the support of an object, the flame ball fell weakly to the ground, swaying slightly. Boom boom boom, Yu could even feel his heartbeat with each gentle sway of the flame ball. His heartbeat pounded with every swing of the flame ball, almost in sync. Serena and the other two gathered around, congratulating Yu on his determination to capture Moltres. But at the same time, they were all filled with trepidation, their gazes fixed on the swirling flame ball. It wasn't surprising they were so nervous. Yu had previously explained the challenges of capturing Moltres, and how arduous it would be. Of particular importance, of course, was the indispensable flame ball. However, the flame ball was incredibly expensive. Even after all Yu had traveled all this time, he had only just received one as a gift from Professor Oak. As for buying one himself, he simply couldn't afford it. It's well known that once an empty Pokéball is successfully cast by a trainer to capture a Pokémon, it becomes useless and cannot be used again. Therefore, for Yu and the others, they only had one chance, and success was a given. Failure was a given. Amidst the crowd's eager anticipation, the Prophet Ball on the ground shook 3 times before finally stagnating with a crisp thud. At that moment, the excitement on Yu and the others' faces was barely contained. Yu was undoubtedly the most excited. After all, Yu was the master of this flaming ball, and this was his first time taming a legendary beast. While the process had been somewhat tortuous and bizarre, it was all good, wasn't it? At least now that Moltres couldn't escape the flaming ball, Yu could finally experience the joy of taming a legendary beast on his own. Although he knew everything was still uncertain, at this moment, overcome with excitement, Yu couldn't help but strike a pose with his training ball. Great! In that case, let's set off immediately. But we must try to get Moltres and the others to the Pokémon Center for treatment before dark. Just like that, they came and went in a flash. Even though it seemed like a long time had passed since Yu and the others finished their meal and climbed onto the ground, and after a series of battles, it was actually only an hour or two. The sun was still mid-air, not yet at its zenith. However, unnoticed, a shadow was stealthily following them in the sky. Yu, I'm leaving Moltres completely in your care. Don't let me down from now on. Kaito Fishin's lips curled up in a smile that would captivate countless girls. Indeed, soaring through the sky was the Kaito Fishin who had departed earlier. His departure was merely superficial. In reality, Kaito Fishin had his own agenda, and it was precisely this subtle motive that had kept him following them throughout the entire sky. But his skills were so superior that even Yu didn't notice. Instead, he and the 3 women continued at full speed. And so, time slowly slipped away as Yu and the others continued their tireless, yet boring, journey. And at this moment, on their way to the Cross-Sea Bridge in Big City, what awaited them? To find out what happened next, please see the next chapter. Chapter 692, Dragon and Tiger Tattoos. Ah! We've finally reached the Cross-Sea Bridge. Is this the bridge that connects to Big City? From afar, it looks so huge and long. At this moment, at the entrance to the Cross-Sea Bridge leading to Big City, Yu and his companions, after a long journey, finally arrived. At this moment, They were all exhausted and collapsed at the intersection of the cross-sea bridge. It must be said that the cross-sea bridge was a bit long, but it was still quite user-friendly. It seemed as if they were prepared for travelers like Yu and his group to get thirsty and hungry and have nowhere to rest and refuel. Therefore, a vending machine was set up directly at the entrance, and next to it, a small pavilion was built for passers-by to rest. At this moment, this small pavilion was empty except for Yu and the other four. But Yu and his companions were happy about this. After all, they were all family. And they didn't have to worry about being restricted around outsiders. As for why I said that, it was simply because Serena and the other two girls were now like a pile of mud, all lying on the ground without a care for their appearance. Yu was relatively okay. After all, his physical fitness and strength were there. If you were to act like the three girls, how would Yu save face? At this moment, Yu had completely lost his initial impatience. Instead, he seemed remarkably calm, as if the lives of the incapacitated Pokémon in his hands were of no concern to him. He simply quietly ate the breakfast Xiaoxu had specially left for him that morning. Of course, this was entirely because Yu had no habit of wasting food. After wolfing down a sandwich, Yu quickly picked up a drink he had just bought from the vending machine, gulped it down, and then handed it to me. After listening to the girls' discussion, Yu finally had time to take in the surroundings of the cross-sea bridge. It really has to be said that this so-called cross-sea bridge was built with great skill. Looking at its entire length, it's endless. But it was precisely because of this glance that Yu discovered something truly remarkable. At this moment, a cargo ship was about to pass through this bridge. However, as the cargo ship was about to pass, the center of the bridge suddenly opened, and the bridges on both sides were opened, and the surrounding equipment opened to both sides. In the center of this bridge, there is a control room that controls the two huge bridge panels in the center of the bridge that can be raised to allow the cruise ship to pass. Therefore, after seeing this scene, Yu was so surprised that his mouth couldn't close. After all, in a strict sense, Yu can be said to have traveled all over the country, but he had never encountered a bridge of this size. Wow, I didn't expect this circle to be openable. Pikachu, come and take a look. This is a sight none of us have ever seen before. After quietly admiring himself, Yu instinctively wanted to call Pikachu, his longtime companion, to witness this magnificent spectacle together. But even after just one look, Yu's initially buoyant spirits immediately soured. Yet, how could he have forgotten Pikachu at this very moment? It was just a matter of losing a battle. His life was even in his hands. The big cross-sea drawbridge. It's 89 kilometers long, built a few years ago, and it's only now completed. However, because the bridge is so long, while pedestrian trainers are officially allowed to cross, due to its length, only bicycles can still be used on this motorized bridge. Air, however, began to recount some of the bridge's details, as if she were familiar with the bridge itself. Air, if you put it that way, you're very familiar with this bridge, Serena was the first to ask, directly addressing everything Yu wanted to inquire about. Yes, I am indeed very familiar with this bridge. My father designed it, and I've seen the blueprints and other related information. Air didn't hold back, directly explaining why she claimed to have such a thorough understanding of the bridge. That's impressive. I didn't expect Air's father to have such an amazing skill, Yu couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. However, before Yu could continue his admiration for long, Air's next words cut him off. If I remember correctly, to cross this bridge, you have to use a bicycle. Or some other motorized vehicle. Otherwise, even if we walked for 3 days and 3 nights, we probably wouldn't reach the other side. And I just happen to know of a bicycle shop nearby. Air's face lit up with pride as he said the latter part, even playfully sticking out his tongue at the others. Ah! No way, we actually have to buy a bicycle? Yu couldn't help but groan inwardly. Although his eyes remained fixed on the bridge and the sea, his heart was already bleeding. His little money, so hard-earned, would probably be back to square one by the time he bought a bicycle. Air, we don't have money, and we're dead. And with our current financial situation, how can we even afford a bicycle? I wonder if you can find one? Look around for rentals, Xiaoxu asked immediately. I think this should be okay. Let's go and ask the boss here. Before Yu could react, Air pulled him to a nearby bicycle shop. At first glance, although there were not many people at the cross-sea bridge, this shop was actually built next to the cross-sea bridge, so there must be a lot of people coming and going, and therefore the business was very good. Yu and the others had just walked in, and it was already crowded. However, the people in the store did not look like they were easy to mess with. Because at this moment, the group of people inside were very well-mannered. Chapter 693 Cycling. What's going on in this shop? Why are there so many thugs? Yu was wary upon entering. After all, it was already packed with thugs. Xiaoxu and Serena seemed even more frightened by the scene, shrugging back behind Yu, their heads barely peeking out. Yu, I think you might not know this yet. Because the cross-sea bridge has been built and its length has increased, there's been a surge of cyclists and motorcycle enthusiasts around here. They call themselves the Speed Racing Brotherhood. Air seemed much calmer, quietly introducing them to Yu. I see. Yu nodded in understanding, a sudden realization dawning on him. However, he wasn't the least bit impressed by the so-called Speed Racing Brotherhood. Honestly, if it weren't for the fact that this was a Pokemon-themed era, motorcycle enthusiasts like these would be easily dispatched with a few shots. The men and women, who looked like gangsters, glanced at Yu and his companions as they entered, then quickly stopped paying attention and resumed their conversations. Let's go and see what bicycles we have. Air led them, and they quickly found the owner of the shop. However, since bicycles were extremely expensive, and Yu and his companions were traveling in already short on cash, considering their upcoming trips, they wouldn't ride bicycles often, so they simply rented 4 bicycles from the owner. Fortunately, the shop also had a branch across the sea bridge, meaning Yu and his companions didn't have to ride their bicycles back. And so, the 4 of them each walked out of the shop, each holding their chosen bicycle. I haven't ridden a bicycle in ages. I wonder if my skills might be a little rusty. Yu touched his white bicycle with a somewhat inexplicable emotion. It was true, Yu loved wearing white clothes, and this bicycle was a great addition. Riding it didn't feel like anything wrong, instead, it felt like a fallen immortal. Really? Then let's have a race to see who's faster, who gets to the destination first. Air popped her head out from nowhere, pushing her red bike and winking playfully at Yu. A race? I'd love to. Yu didn't refuse, but simply agreed. That sounds like fun. I'll join in, too. Serena, pushing her pink bike, darted out from Yu's other side, her eyes also tinged with cunning. In that case, then, set, go. With those words, Air pedaled hard on her bike and sped off. Serena followed closely behind. Air, why are you cheating? Serena shouted angrily. Whatever. Whoever arrives last gets a drink. Hey, slow down. Don't go so fast, it's dangerous. Okay. Xiaoxu, also on her cyan bicycle, shouted, following behind at a leisurely pace, her eyes filled with worry. As she passed Yu, she gave him a sweet smile. Yu, I'm leaving first. You should hurry up and catch up too. Haha, go ahead. I'll catch up soon. Yu waved his hand nonchalantly, not at all nervous about being overtaken. Instead, he pedaled calmly, not at all like he was about to compete with Air and the others, but more like he was out for a parade. Time to show off your skills. Let's see what real high-level operation looks like. Yu's lips curved into a smile, and he slammed the pedals. Suddenly, the entire bicycle burst into a crimson burst of light, shooting off at a speed like a flash of white lightning. In just a few breaths, Yu had overtaken all 3 women. You're really too slow. I'll go ahead, Yu's voice rang out, a hint of pride. Yu, you're so abominable. You actually managed to overtake us. Serena, let's go. We can't let this guy look down on us girls. Seeing this, Air called out to the authorities, and she and Serena raced side by side, chasing Yu. Xiaoxu was left alone on her bicycle, watching the 3 of them speed by at lightning speed. She felt both helpless and amused. Really? Those 3 actually left me behind again. But, in that case, Vulpix is decidedly yours. Xiaoxu stopped her bicycle and released Vulpix from her Pokeball. Coincidentally, the bicycle Xiaoxu and her friends had rented had baskets, so Vulpix fit right in, its size perfectly fitting. 6. Vulpix seemed especially excited to be led out by its master. If it weren't for the fact that its master was currently riding a bicycle, and its short legs couldn't keep up, it would have been eager to run after it. How is it, Vulpix? Isn't it nice? This sea breeze. It makes me feel soothed. Xiaoxu's face was filled with comfort as she felt a gentle breeze, with a hint of the sea, brush against her cheeks. Her anxious heart, which had been tinged with anxiety from the rush to get there, seemed to be soothed a little. Perhaps it was because of the intense riding earlier that she was feeling a little tired, but Xiaoxia soon spotted Yu and the other two riding side by side. They were chatting and laughing, completely different from the earlier competition. Xiaoxia quickly pedaled hard, catching up with the three and keeping pace with him. Why did you stop suddenly? Has the game ended and the result been decided? Xiaoxia looked at the three of them with a little curiosity, expecting them to give her an explanation. Chapter 694 Carrying. Yet, how could those two possibly be my match? In the end, I was the victor, Yu was brimming with pride, his tone unabashed. Tisk, how dare you? We just let you win, you, a grown man. Are you ashamed to compete with two weak women like us? Yu's words seemed to irritate Serena and Air, who began to retort. Okay, my bad, what else could Yu say? He couldn't even reason with a girl, otherwise, he would be the one to suffer in the end. Hey, Xiaoxia, why did you let Vulpix out? Serena was the first to spot Vulpix perched in Xiaoxia's bicycle basket. Yet, it's such nice weather, don't you think the sea breeze is really nice? So I let Vulpix out. Xiaoxia's face was filled with a gentle smile. Vulpix was also very cooperative. Looking at its excited expression, it was clear that it was extremely happy. Yet, why didn't I think of that? Xiaoxia's reminder suddenly made Serena and the others feel the breeze blowing against them feel incredibly comfortable. In that case, Foxy, why don't you come out and get some fresh air? Serena didn't hesitate, releasing Foxy into the basket of her bicycle. As expected, Foxy was beaming with excitement after being released, and Serena was delighted to see Foxy's reaction. Hey, Air, why don't you let the long-tail Foxy and the others out for some fresh air? The wind is really nice here. Serena glanced at Air, who hadn't released her own Pokémon yet, and asked with some confusion. Air, upon hearing Serena's question, rolled her eyes at Serena. Aren't you talking nonsense? My long-tail fox isn't like yours. It can fit in a small bicycle basket, and it's almost as tall as me now. Okay, no. Air, are you stupid? The bikes we rent are the kind you use for everyday life. They're not those mountain bikes without a rear rack. Yu finally couldn't help but interject. However, he quickly earned a venomous look from Air. You're the smartest, aren't you? Of course I know that. But I see you all put your Pokémon in the basket, so I can't be independent, right? Air's counter-argument was so convincing that she even believed it. Without hesitation, she flung Longtail Fox's Pokéball out, letting it sit on the backrest of her bicycle. Yu, hurry up and let Pikachu out to get some fresh air. We've been traveling for so long. Instead of keeping it in the Pokémon's hand, why not let it out for some fresh air? After all, doesn't Pikachu usually like to be outside? Serena said again. Perhaps out of some tacit agreement, the Pokémon they chose to release were all their own starter Pokémon. This time, Yu didn't have the same concerns as Air's group. Without a second thought, he pulled out a Pokéball with a lightning bolt symbol and pressed the white button. As for why Pikachu was put into the Pokéball and then released now instead of recuperating, it was mainly because Yu and his team wanted to increase their speed and efficiency. They had put Pikachu, who had fallen into coma after losing his combat ability, directly into the Pokéball. This was not only much more convenient, but also allowed Pikachu to heal within the Pokéball. After all, Pikachu and the other Pokémon weren't nearly as seriously injured as Moltres, they were simply exhausted and unable to fight. As for Pikachu's apparent resistance to entering the Pokéball, there was absolutely nothing that could be done. After all, this was all about the ultimate outcome. Pikachu could only be forced to give in. Thinking of Moltres' injury again, Yu's relaxed mood, which had been somewhat relaxed during his earlier bike ride, became tense once again. Even his pace quickened. In just a few breaths, his bike had pulled away from the group and moved 11 or 12 meters ahead. Hey, Yu, what's wrong with you? Why did you suddenly speed up? Wait for me. Yeah, come on, you're a grown man, and you've got so much energy. We're all a little tired. Serena and the others' calls finally jolted Yu from his impatience, and he slowed his pace for no apparent reason, awaiting the arrival of the three women. Pikachu at this moment, Pikachu, caressed by the gentle, soothing sea breeze, finally seemed to snap out of his weakened state. He surveyed his surroundings with a slightly bewildered gaze. Turning to see that it was his master, his initial anxiety eased slightly, his expression becoming even more relaxed. But the next moment, a hint of anger returned. That slightly angry expression was incredibly adorable. However, due to his utter trance, Serena and the other two hadn't caught up yet, so no one else could see. Oh. Pikachu, you're finally awake. How are you feeling? Isn't the sea breeze blowing? It feels so good, seeing Pikachu finally awake from his incapacitated state. Yu's previously gloomy mood finally brightened, and he was overjoyed. Hey, what's with that expression on your face? Do you still want to fight? Do you want to rebel? Let me tell you, let alone your current state. Even if you are in your prime, you are no match for me, believe it or not. Hey, I say. Why are you still glaring at me? Do you really not accept it? Want to rebel? Believe it or not, I will spank you. Yu was actually a little scared by Pikachu's angry glare at this time, and his head could not help but shrink back. However, facing Yu's continuous words, Pikachu's cheeks were puffed up with anger. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 695 Electric Shock. But at Yu's barrage of words, Pikachu's cheeks puffed up in anger. Electric arcs flickered faintly on either side of his face. Even though Pikachu looked frail at the moment, the power stored in those pink electric sacs on either side of his cheeks was no joke. Oh, you're not planning on doing anything serious, are you? Yu sensed something was amiss and, with a small, ominous thought, he quickly stopped his bike to plan his next move. But Pikachu didn't give him a second, puffing his cheeks in anger. Lightning coiled around him, ready to strike at Yu at any moment. Gudong, the sound of swallowing saliva was a little abrupt in the quiet atmosphere. Well, Pikachu, you've always been a kind Pokemon. You need to calm down. Yu panicked, and his bike even slid to the side. He was about to have a proper discussion with Pikachu about their situation. And Pikachu, I tell you that you are not in a good condition to use electric shocks. If you continue like this, you will probably faint from exhaustion again, Yu advised earnestly, with an attitude of I am doing this for your own good. However, this look made Pikachu even more unhappy. Who are you looking down on? How dare you say that I can't do it? It's just releasing a small electric shock, right? Not to mention me in my prime, I can still hit you now. Thinking of this, Pikachu didn't hesitate. With his cheeks puffed up, he used a slight electric shock to hit Yu. What's wrong with Yu? Why did he stop again? It's inexplicable. At this time, the three women who were riding behind him subconsciously stopped their bikes after seeing this scene, and looked at Yu's figure with confusion. I wonder what he's up to? Forget it, let's hurry up and rejoin him. Actually, we should be considerate of Yu. He's under a lot of pressure, after all. Moltres' safety is completely in our hands right now. And Yu is one of the accomplices who contributed to Moltres' current state. Xiaoxu was still her gentle self, still thinking of Yu even now, truly understanding. I know. Let's hurry up and rejoin him now. However, just as the three women pedaled their bicycles and were about to rejoin Yu, something happened before them that made them pause. The bicycles, already moving forward, were involuntarily brought to a halt. The sudden braking nearly sent the Firefox and Vulpix, both sitting in their baskets, flying. Even the long-tailed Firefox crashed headfirst into Yu's back. 6-6, Firefox, Longtail, the Pokemon all let out cries of discontent, each looking at their masters with puzzled eyes. They couldn't understand why the bike, which had been riding smoothly and just getting on the road, suddenly came to a screeching halt. Don't you know how dangerous this is? It nearly sent them flying. This is a sea-crossing bridge, after all. If anything went wrong, they'd all be thrown into the sea. Most importantly, the three Pokemon in the bike were all fire type. If they were thrown into the sea, 3 more Pokemon would likely need emergency treatment. An ambulance would have to be called to the Pokemon Center immediately, and they'd all be rushed to the IQ. Then, following their master's shocked gaze, they saw only Yu and Pikachu, who had been riding ahead of them. Now, both rider and bike were completely engulfed in lightning, bathed in it. If it weren't for the screams that erupted from within and Yu's charcoal-blackened face, the Pokemon and their trainers would have suspected Yu of possessing some unusual fetish. Yu, After recovering from their shock, Serena and the other two quickly pedaled their bikes to Yu's side, frantically checking on him. Yu, what's wrong? Why did you suddenly get an electric shock? Yu, are you okay? How are you feeling? Would you like some water to calm down? The three women asked, each one concerned. At that moment, Yu, bathed in lightning, was now completely dark. Even a wisp of smoke occasionally rose and drifted overhead. Hearing the three women's concerned greetings, Yu instinctively opened his mouth to respond. However, the next moment, instead of a sound, a puff of smoke erupted from his mouth. After finally recovering from the criticism, Yu hurriedly shook his swollen head to clear his head. Only then did he find the energy to reply, "It's okay, it's okay. Pikachu was just playing a joke on me." Yu waved his hand dismissively, even trying to convince the three women. He even reached out and touched Pikachu's head, saying, "Ha ha ha, not bad, Pikachu. Your electric shock is still as powerful as ever, not bad, not bad. You look much better now." Yu said this, feeling incredibly relieved. Fortunately, Pikachu had only just woken from a coma and was still a little weak. The electric shock wasn't that powerful. Despite his disheveled appearance, he had actually blocked most of the energy with his internal energy. However, he said this out of concern for his own safety. If someone added fuel to the fire and made matters worse at this point, Pikachu would probably risk his life and give his master another scolding. But he seemed to believe himself. His master's words had a profound effect on his current state, making him look quite embarrassed. Pikachu's inner emotions had been released, and the frown on his face had relaxed considerably. Pika at this point, facing Yu's touch, Pikachu wasn't as resistant anymore. He even cooperated, revealing an expression of enjoyment, and called out a few times. Chapter 696 Letting Go. I told you, don't look at me so weak, I'm actually still capable. Look, my current master is so embarrassed by my criticism, his whole body is charred. Pikachu was thinking with pride at this moment. As Pikachu's master and a companion for many years, Yu was familiar with Pikachu. It could be said that as soon as Pikachu raised its butt, Yu knew what he was going to do. And at this moment, seeing Pikachu's smug expression, how could he not know what he was thinking? Although it was a bit crude, it was almost correct. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Go ahead, be proud for a while. Who told you to change your status now? I, a grown man, am sorry for a sick patient like me. When you return to your prime, I will let you know why flowers are so red. Thinking this in his heart, Yu really didn't dare to show it at the moment, and could only respond with a smile on his face. Right, that's pretty much what happened. Though a bit skeptical, seeing Yu's already resolute expression, Serena and the other two girls couldn't ask any more questions, only offering words of concern. Hey, Yu. It's been so long. Let's see if there's a parking area up ahead so we can take a break. As for a parking area, I remember I just saw a partial diagram of this cross-sea bridge. If I'm not mistaken, there's one not far from us. Yu's reminder instantly dawned on him. Indeed, despite the distance they traveled from the start to now, only about a third of the way across the entire bridge, it had already been an hour or two. It was only because of the playful banter that the entire ride was so joyful and fun, that they'd barely noticed a passage of time. If it were just one person riding for so long, they'd probably be bored to death and ready to collapse. In that case, let's set off. No more delays, let's get to the Pokémon Center before sunset. Yes, let's get to the Pokémon Center in Bake City before sunset. Then you can compete in the gym challenge in Bake City the next day, Air echoed, speaking with a matter-of-fact tone, as if she knew Yu intimately. Yu, as if embarrassed by having his thoughts revealed, scratched his hair awkwardly. Amidst a joking crowd, he admitted it with aplomb. Yes, I now have 6 badges. I only have 2 left to reach 8, qualifying to challenge the Kalos League. And the penultimate badge is about to fall into my hands. How can I not be excited? The thought of this made my blood boil. I couldn't wait to compete in the Bake Gym battle right now and successfully capture the badge. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Yu's blood boiled once again. The breeze, once refreshing, was now completely unnoticeable to the crowd and their Pokémon. Let's go. Full speed ahead, destination Bake City. Yu quickly jumped onto his bicycle. From a certain section of the cross-sea bridge, only Pikachu's cries could be heard intermittently. Pikachu, slow down, Slow down for this, Pikachu. Don't you know I'm a sick man? How can I withstand such torment? But at this moment, no matter how much Pikachu screamed, Yu had completely let himself go. To what extent? He opened his hands, embracing the air. The breeze caressed his cheeks, and Yu remained intoxicated, lost in it. The breeze ruffled everyone's hair, and at that moment, in the sunlight, the four young men and women on the bikes looked incredibly energetic. From time to time, one could even hear their hearty laughter. Long-winged gulls flew overhead, and from the surface, water-type Pokémon leaped from the water, their spray shimmering in the sunlight like tiny, shimmering gemstones, a scene of beauty and fantasy. Although they had mentioned the rest area was some distance away, and while it looked very close on the map, it wasn't until they actually rode it that they realized how much longer it actually took Yu and his group to reach the rest area. And after half an hour, Yu and his group finally arrived at the rest area. However, when Yu and his group arrived, a group of people were already there. They looked about Yu's age, and each of them had a bicycle. However, compared to Yu and his group's simpler bikes, theirs were more ostentatious, and there was a leader among them. His bicycle had been modified to resemble Molter's. The girl next to the man had hers modified to resemble a melodic. Besides the garish modifications on their bikes, their attire was equally garish. Their clothing styles blended together, their faces practically spelling out the word gangster. Yu, what should we do? It looks like someone's already here. Upon seeing the group, Serena seemed visibly timid. Pulling her bike next to Yu, she asked timidly, "Why should we be afraid of him? We'll just go. It's not his business anyway, right? Besides, since we're here, there's no reason to leave empty-handed." Yu looked unconcerned and gave Serena a reassuring look. But, Serena was clearly still a little worried. Just as she was about to say something else, she was interrupted forcefully by Yu. "Hey, why are you afraid of them? They're just hooligans, right? Serena, be brave. I'm here with you. If anyone dares to bully you, I'll give them a thrashing. And if we miss this rest stop, the next one will probably be another hour away. But I can hold you off for the time being." Chapter 697 Hurrying on the Road. At this very moment, while Yu was comforting Serena, Xiaoxo and Air had already arrived at Yu's side. Clearly, they hadn't expected so many people dressed as thugs to be at this rest stop. As girls, they were all somewhat intimidated by such people. But after hearing Yu's words, Serena and the other two girls seemed to find their bearings. Without even a hint of concealment, they glanced openly at the boy standing beside them. Their initially restless hearts gradually calmed. Why should they be afraid of those thugs? We have Yu here. As long as he's here, we won't be bullied. He'll definitely protect us. And Yu's strength is truly formidable. So don't worry, I see everyone's thirsty. I'll go get you a few drinks from the vending machine over there. Yu gently patted the three girls on the shoulder, asked them to wait a moment, and then hurried over to the vending machine. Elsewhere, after Yu left, Serena and the other two girls, though slightly relieved by Yu's words, couldn't help but huddle together and move to a vacant seat. Meanwhile, the gangster-looking boys and girls, upon seeing Yu and his group arrive, didn't react. They simply glanced at them and continued their conversation. Luckily, Serena and the others had already sent out their Pokémon, so things wouldn't be so boring. Perhaps for some reason, Yu went to get some drinks and returned soon after. After a quick glance at the still challenged gangsters, he sat down next to the three girls. After handing them their drinks, he took the sandwiches they had prepared for lunch. While silently munching on his food to recharge, Yu, out of habit, couldn't help but listen to the gangsters' conversation. Boss, what are we doing today?" The voice was clearly that of a subordinate. "Yet, we've been out all day and haven't seen anything yet. It's really boring," another of the gang members chimed in. "To think we, a once proud young racing gang, have fallen into such a state of idleness. Back then, under the guidance of our seniors, we were so high-spirited." The only girl among the gang was also feeling a sense of regret. "Let me think about it. Don't worry. Since they're using these cross-sea bridges, and even these non-motorized lanes, they must be cycling enthusiasts. Why don't we find them and have a race with them?" the leader suggested, stroking his chin, his eyes flickering around the passing crowd. In the end, he stared intently at Yu and his group, lingering particularly on their bikes for the longest time. "I think that's a good idea. How about we stick to the old rules? We'll set up a checkpoint up ahead, and only those who win will be allowed to pass." The girl's eyes lit up and she agreed. Judging from their practiced tone, it was clear they'd done this sort of thing before. "That's a great idea. We haven't been active in ages. Now is a good time to let others know about our young racers," one of the younger brothers chimed in, though even then, the enthusiasm in his eyes was undisguised. And with his shout, the surrounding younger brothers, as if infected, burst into enthusiastic shouts. "Racing, racing, racing, long live the young racers!" Passing trainers, pedestrians, and even Pokémon glanced in awe. Yu finally understood what he was saying. While there might still be some slight differences, it was pretty much the same. It seemed like these guys weren't just staying in school. They were just middle school boys obsessed with racing and becoming famous. Thinking of this, Yu immediately felt a sense of relief. In his eyes, they were just a bunch of students. What kind of waves could they possibly cause? Therefore, his attention shifted away from the gang of thug-dressed boys and girls, and he focused on the delicious food in his hands. However, what happened next severely slapped Yu in the face. Yes, they were indeed a group of students who didn't like studying. But considering that they were a well-known teenage racing gang on this cross-sea bridge, how could they be easily defeated? Moreover, after being in society for a long time, even the most despicable people were likely not simple people. The topic had strayed a bit, so he returned to it again. With Yu's return, the three women felt much more at ease. Therefore, they ate with peace of mind, no longer worried. He broke off the remaining sandwich in half and handed it to the still somewhat depressed Pikachu to eat. Yu quickly finished the rest of his food, retrieved the schematic diagram of the cross-sea bridge from his storage ring, and began to study it. Yu, how far are we from Big City now?" Serena sipped on her sandwich as she approached. Ignoring the others, she cast a rather ambiguous glance, resting her head on Yu's back and asking, "Well, I think it'll take at least half a day to reach Big City. We should be there before sunset." Why is it still so long?" Listening nearby, Ayer couldn't help but look frustrated. She glanced at the sun, which was already scorching overhead, and the scorching heat of the earth. Thinking about a half-day's journey ahead, Ayer felt a little dejected. Indeed, after all this time on the road, it was already midday, the sun high overhead. Even from the bridge, Ayer could feel the heat of the sun blazing down on the sea. "My dear," after hearing this, Yu finally had the chance to look at the girls, with a hint of uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Chapter 698, Besieged. Looking at the three women who had been adventuring with him since morning, and who had followed him non-stop to escort Molters to Big City, Yu felt a surge of inexplicable emotions. It was a mixture of gratitude and a tinge of worry. Serena and the other two were all constantly on the road, and the fatigue on their faces was clearly visible. It was a necessary evil. For Molters' safety, they had no choice but to hurry and reach Big City for treatment. Under normal circumstances, even a moderately intense pace would be impossible, let alone such continuous travel. They would even stop to rest if they encountered beautiful scenery or encountered some activity along the way. At the very least, even on a remote journey, they would have a lunch break. But now, not only were they munching on dry food that wasn't heated, but the anxiety of the journey had left them looking a bit haggard. "Selina, Ayer, Xiaoxu, thank you." Yu raised his eyes, his gaze filled with earnestness as he scanned the three women present one by one, his tone tinged with solemnity. "Why so sudden? Why are you apologizing to us, eh? Yu, what's wrong? Why are you thanking me all of a sudden? What's wrong with you? Are you feeling less lonely with us by your side?" The three women, their thoughts fading from their minds, looked up at Yu in astonishment, truly baffled by his sudden words. His solemn expression and serious words were met with such awe. The women were at a loss for words. After the initial shock, they could only respond with a teasing chuckle. Yu was stunned by the woman's subsequent words, scratching his head in embarrassment. Although he felt a little embarrassed to express his feelings directly, he was met with a mixture of anticipation and shyness in the women's gazes. He continued, "Indeed, thank you for your company on this journey. Your company has made my journey less lonely." "What's wrong? You're suddenly being so sentimental. That's annoying. You're so annoying. You're actually touching me." Yu, "We also want to thank you for your care throughout this trip." At Yu's somewhat blunt words, the three women blushed, their gazes averted, embarrassed to look at him. 6 Firefox Longtail. Seeing the slightly strange expressions of their three masters, the three Pokémon beside them involuntarily raised their heads. They had come back from their immersion in the world of food. They didn't know why, but they had been so hungry just now, but now they felt inexplicably full. It was just a momentary moment, perhaps due to shyness on their part, but after each of them finished what they wanted to say, silence fell. Yu's eyes flickered around, momentarily unsure what to say. As for Serena and the other two, they all felt embarrassed, their heads hanging low. They almost wanted to bury their heads in their chests. If one could see the pretty faces at that moment, they would have seen them flushed red. Only a few Pokémon remained, staring at each other in bewilderment. For a moment, the scene was awkwardly quiet. But soon, a movement from the other side broke the awkward atmosphere. It was unclear whether they had already finalized their plans or were just resting. A group of scoundrels, young men and women who called themselves the Young Racers, let out a few more inexplicable shouts and screams before finding their coquettish bikes and scrambling to get on them. Go! 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 Ah! Strange laughter and roars filled the area. But there seemed to be no organization or discipline. But in reality, it wasn't like that. Instead, they formed a perfectly orderly convoy of bicycles. At the head was the leader, whose bicycle was decorated as molters. Behind him, the only girl among them, her bicycle dressed as a melodic. Then, one by one, they lined up, though it wasn't clear if this was the characteristic style of their so-called young racers. The long line of bicycles gradually shifted formation with each advance, sometimes moving side by side in a long snake formation, or in an alphabetical formation. This group of people is quite strange, indeed, I think so too. As long as they don't cause us any trouble, that's all. That's fine. Alright, everyone, finish your food and rest for a while. We're ready to leave now. We must make sure we reach the Pokémon Center in Big City before dark. After the scene with the young racers, the atmosphere in the area calmed down considerably. Yu ignored the three women's conversation and spoke directly. I know, we're almost done eating now, I'm full, we can get on with our journey. The three women hurriedly finished off the remaining food, then gathered up the scraps and tossed them into a nearby trash can. Then, they found their bikes, got on them, and continued their journey. As the saying goes, the more you fear something, the more likely it'll find you. They rode their bikes, enjoying the sea breeze, but before they'd gotten far, trouble was already closing in on them. Why was it closing in on them, rather than just entwining them and finding them? It was because, at that moment, Yu and the other four were truly surrounded. And the people surrounding them were none other than the same group of young men and women who claimed to be the racing gang they'd encountered during their previous break. They had suddenly appeared from nowhere, and before Yu and the others could react, they had already formed a goose-like formation, surrounding them. Chapter 699 Competition. What's going on? Where are these people from? I remember now, aren't they the same group we encountered at the rest area? Why did they have to knock on the door? Seeing the group completely surrounded, Serena and the other two panicked. It was clear that these young thugs on the drag racers were quite skilled on their bikes. After surrounding Yu and the others, even if Yu tried to break out with his bike, he couldn't. Whenever he tried to advance, a few thugs would swoop forward on their bikes, forming a line and blocking him. What do you mean? What do you want? Yu's eyes widened as he demanded. Surrounded, Yu and the others had no choice but to continue forward with them. This sudden change also caused some panic in the Pokémon, but Pikachu wasn't Pikachu. Even in this passive state, and utterly weakened, the fighting spirit he exuded remained undiminished. His eyes flashed with hostility, and he grasped the baskets on either side of him with both hands to steady himself. At this moment, the pink electric sacs on either side of his cheeks sparked with arcs of electricity again. It must be said that Pikachu had been with Yu for a long time, regularly trained by him using martial arts techniques. This included taking medicinal baths, which resulted in Pikachu not having the high damage of a typical Pikachu, but still being a fragile creature. His physical fitness was also very strong, more than enough to sustain him in close combat. The benefit of the medicinal baths was that they enhanced his recovery. As long as he wasn't seriously injured, such as this, a half-day's rest and adequate food would be enough to recover. Earlier in the parking lot, Yu had already fed Pikachu well. Therefore, while not fully restored to his peak strength, he had at least recovered 4 or 5 levels. At least now, if Yu were to use his electric shock skills, Even with his internal energy to resist and filter the impact, he would probably still feel a slight tingling sensation. What are you trying to do? We're not trying to do anything, we just want to have some fun with you guys, one of the thugs said in a rather obscene voice. And as if that voice immediately triggered a chain reaction, the thugs followed suit, shouting loudly. The obscenity in the voice made the three women shudder. Yi Yu's face was now gloomy, and he wished he could just ride his bike with his gun in hand and punch them in the face. However, considering that this was still a society governed by the rule of law, and that these thugs weren't from the ancient martial arts world, he could only suppress his impulsive thoughts. Yu, what should we do now? They're coming with such force, it's obvious they're not someone to be trifled with, and they're outnumbered. Serena and the others looked worried. But at this moment, Yu's hatred for Amen deepened. Damn it, it's all because of that damn thing. Having lost so many Pokemon, most of my main Pokemon haven't fully recovered yet. Otherwise, I'd have thought I was good-tempered and just charged forward with a Pokeball. But the situation was stronger than me, and Yu suppressed his urge. Tell me, what exactly is your goal? Hey, didn't I tell you before? I just wanted to tease you, one of the thugs, seemingly taking no prisoners, continued with a lewd laugh. This time, however, someone quickly intervened. The only girl in the group, dressed like a little gangster, stood up with a stern voice. Shut up and be serious. We're all organized, disciplined delinquents. Don't make me sound like you're all a bunch of scumbags. The girl's scolding instantly quieted the previously noisy atmosphere. It seemed this girl held considerable prestige within their group. At this moment, the girl, riding her beautiful, decorated bicycle, began to separate from the group, gradually approaching Yu and the others. What do you want? If you dare come any closer, don't blame me for being rude. PFFT, you're not mistaken, brother? You're surrounded by us now, and you still want to be rude to me. Haven't you been wanting to ask us what we want to do? It's simple. You should have heard it before. I planted this tree, I built this road, and if you want to pass this way, you have to pay me for it. The girl's voice was now particularly serious, especially when paired with her little girl face, which made her look even more socially dangerous. However, after hearing her words, Yu was stunned for a moment, and then almost burst into laughter again. How you really have the nerve to say anything? You're not afraid, you're just laughing your ass off. According to you, you built this cross-sea bridge. Instead of staying in school to learn some Pokemon knowledge, you're messing around with some boring stuff. I advise you to go back home and get some sleep. What did you say? How dare you look down on us? I think you're asking for trouble. You're older than us, but we're only a year or two older, aren't we? And yet you're lecturing us. You're so brave. However, Yu's words clearly infuriated them. As soon as he finished speaking, the group around him roared in anger. Judging by their excitement, they almost wanted to ride their bikes and ram the group that surrounded them. Shut up, everyone. Stop making such a fuss. The man who seemed to be the leader finally spoke, his words imbued with the aura of a boss. The noisy scene instantly quieted down, leaving only the sound of the bicycles. So, you're so arrogant that you look down on us. What? How about a competition? The eldest man among them rode his bike forward a few steps, then performed a clean drift. He tilted his head and looked at Yu, his eyes full of provocation and scrutiny. Chapter 700 Choice. So, you're so arrogant, you actually look down on us? What? How about a competition? The man, the leader among them, rode his bike forward a few steps, then executed a clean drift. He tilted his head and looked at Yu, his eyes full of provocation and scrutiny. A competition? How do you do it? Yu was just interested, not caring at all about the danger he was currently in. This competition is actually quite simple. Don't bother you. We're all civilized people. You can choose between a one-on-one fight or a group fight. After the man, who seemed like the leader, stopped his bike, his group of subordinates also stopped their bikes, but they still maintained a surrounding formation, surrounding Yu and the others. Tisk, do you really think I'm a 3-year-old? You're still using such an old trick these days? One-on-one or group fight? If it's one-on-one, I'll challenge all of you. If it's a group fight, all of you will fight me. Yu smiled meaningfully, as if he had expected you to say that. However, the shock Yu had imagined on the man's face didn't appear. Instead, the leading man, after a strange expression, burst into laughter. His laugh seemed to have magical power, and the group of followers surrounding Yu and his group also followed suit. Boss, Did you hear that? What was that guy saying? There's actually this level of understanding between a group fight and a one-on-one duel? That's quite something. I suggest we use it next time. Haha, that's hilarious. I didn't expect people like that still exist these days. From his tone before, he seemed to think we were behind the times. I didn't expect a true country bumpkin to be right in front of us. Ha 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 ha. Yu seemed a little irritated by the chorus of laughter. He glared and roared. Laugh. Shut up. That cackle. It's just annoying. Ha ha ha, why are you the only one allowed to talk and not us? The leading man clearly wasn't buying Yu's rhetoric. Although he was initially startled by Yu's roar, he quickly recovered. Looking at his fellow comrades and feeling the Pokeball strapped to his waist, he felt a surge of strength and courage. Didn't you say you wanted to compete? Then tell me the rules. I'm in a hurry. Yu spoke again, his eyes etched with an icy coldness, his gaze fixed intently on the people blocking his path. Yu was truly anxious. If he was delayed any longer by this group of thugs, his estimated time would be significantly off. But Moltres was in dire need of emergency care, and every delay meant further danger. This, of course, made Yu anxious. Time is money, it's life. Yet, despite this group of people wasted his time. How could Yu tolerate this? If only Charizard and other key Pokemon hadn't recovered from their inability to fight. Furthermore, if Yu hadn't yet fully grasped their opponent's true strength, then given his usual personality, why would he waste so much time talking to this group of people? He simply flung his Pokeball out to clear the way. It seemed as if he was once again startled by the coldness in Yu's eyes, or perhaps his conscience had been awakened? Or perhaps he still had a kind heart, and after seeing Yu's reaction, he knew they seemed to be in a hurry. He stopped his idle chatter, even the playful expression on his face faded. Since you're so impatient, then let's begin. What I mean by a one-on-one duel and a group duel are different from what you understand literally. A one-on-one duel means you versus me, each using 3 Pokemon. As for a group duel, it means you versus 3 of us, and if we have 3, each of us can only send out 1 Pokemon. In other words, in the end, it's still a battle between 3 Pokemon against 3 Pokemon. The leading witness, Qiui, laid out the rules in the most concise manner possible. Okay, you can make your choice now. But before that, let me tell you my name. So your ignorance won't affect your understanding of the upcoming battle. Remember, my name is Agu. I'm the leader of the famous teenage drag race gang on the Cross Sea Bridge, nicknamed Brother Goo. The guy named Brother Goo clenched his fists and pointed his thumbs at himself again and again. He was extremely arrogant. Brother Goo? Okay, I'll remember you. I hope you don't meet me one day. Oh, you're making me so scared. Even if I meet you, what can I do? Hurry and choose, group fight or one-on-one fight. The man named Brother Goo didn't care at all about Yu's slightly threatening words, and instead urged him on. Alright, stop bragging. It's just a Pokemon battle, isn't it? I'll be more democratic and choose a group fight or a one-on-one duel. Don't come crying when you give me a book and accuse me of bullying a kid. Yu was also becoming quite arrogant at this point, even his words betraying his usual impassioned demeanor, a bit uncharacteristic of the calm and cautious Yu who appeared passionate on the outside but was actually quite calm and cautious on the inside. Boss, don't waste so much time with him. Just have a group fight. I'll also give my Rhythmite some exercise. Big sister AG is right. Boss, don't overthink it. If they ask you to choose, just go for it. A group fight is great. You can give our Pokemon some exercise. Otherwise, who knows if their strength has improved after all this time. The group of thugs on the Cross Sea Bridge were discussing, each staring at Yu like a wolf looking at a little white rabbit. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.